All righty, ready. Howdy, folks. We're here bringing you Senior Bowl preview part 3, even though I think part 2 hasn't quite been uploaded on our YouTube channel yet. But we wanted to bring you preview part 3 just because, we thought Monday uploading might be a little bit late, and we were just excited to get this out because we're talking about the fantasy players today. And so, really excited for the Senior Bowl next week. We're flying out on Monday night, and so we'll see some of you there. You can expect practice recaps on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, as well as some interview clips. And just really excited to see everyone. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ask questions to us on Twitter, Discord, YouTube, etc. We will be live for those practice recaps. And so drop a comment or a question, and we will let you know to the best of our abilities. Before we get started with these fantasy guys, I just wanted to add a couple of quick roster updates to the Senior Bowl rosters. The Senior Bowl has been doing their best in swiping some Shrine Bowl guys, and so that also means that some guys are, dropping out of the Senior Bowl as well. But a couple of the guys we've added here, Washington's right tackle Roger Rosengarten has been added to the rosters, as well as Kentucky offense tackle Jeremy Flax. Do you have anything to say about your left tackle there, Mike, from Kentucky?
I did not go back and watch him, but I will be repping him all week. Go Cats.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. They're both 6'6" offensive tackles, so they're just gonna be giants out there. A guy that I talked about a couple times on the tailgate show during the season was Jarvis Brownlee Jr., the corner from Louisville, and he'll be out there as well. Really excited about that. Louisville and Missouri were two schools that really surprised with how good their defenses were, and that really led to resurgence in a way that we didn't expect at the beginning of the season. So, but speaking of Missouri, Ennis Rextra Jr., we talked about him in preview part 1 with the defensive skill position. He is out. He had core muscle surgery, apparently, and so he will not be playing at the Senior Bowl. But who will be playing, who we haven't talked about yet, is UConn edge Eric Watts. He is technically the lightest defensive lineman on the American team, although he's probably an edge. Notably, only the American team lists their edges with the defensive line, and the national team groups them with the linebackers. So it's probably different systems we're going to see there. A couple of other additions I'm excited to see: Boston College cornerback Elijah Jones and Oregon safety of Evan Williams. Some physical guys and some bigger guys, so good like size talent. And one last person, I just closed out that tab, but we have one more person who is not going to be at the Senior Bowl, and that's Arizona tight end Tanner McLachlan. Who we've been saying all week that the tight end group looks a little thin, but it gets a little bit thinner with Tanner McLachlan dropping out as well. So those are some other roster updates. Anyone you're excited on that list to see, Mike?
On that, I don't know if you said the SEMO wide receiver from the FCS. They're just always the biggest mysteries, and I'm pretty excited to watch Ryan Flournoy from SEMO. So that's really probably the one I'm most excited about to watch.
Yeah, I will say, because we're talking about the fantasy guys today, I didn't add the fantasy guys onto this list because we're just going to add them onto the list later. But I mean, the FCS guys are always interesting, right? Who was it? Kyle Duggar, I think, was also a Senior Bowl guy, if I remember correctly. Lenore Ryan in the house.
Lenore Ryan, yeah. And he's been working out pretty well for the Patriots. I think they're pretty excited about that investment.
Yeah, exactly. And Cole Strange a few years ago as well, I believe.
Another Patriot. Let's keep going.
Another Patriot. All of them are going to the Patriots, apparently. There was also that Liberty wide receiver, if I remember correctly, as well, who also I think was a Patriot, maybe.
He went to the Shrine Bowl. You're thinking about Demario Douglas. He's a Shrine Bowl guy.
Was that who I'm thinking of? Maybe, yeah. Also a Patriot, though, right? And so, these All-Star games are crazy with these FCS guys. So, really excited. And I've heard good things about UConn edge Eric Watts as well. So, but yeah, without further ado, let's just hop right into it. We're going to talk about every single fantasy player that's going to be at the Senior Bowl. Every single one. So this might be a longer show. So, grab your popcorn now while we're talking about the quarterbacks. But because buckle up, it's going to be a ride. But yeah, let's jump right into it. Mike wanted me to make sure everyone knew, disclaimer, on these slides, the projected NFL draft capital that I put is my projected NFL draft capital, where I think, not my evaluation, but where I think the NFL will draft these players. Just so there is a disclaimer there. Just wanted to make that very clear so that Mike's reputation is not tainted by this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I have a pretty good quarterback and running back record. Wide receivers really not. It's iffy. But like, yeah, the other two, pretty good. I don't want them to get ruined.
Well, you disagreed with my highest draft capital projection on this list off the bat. So why don't you start with that with Bo Nix right here?
Yeah, Bo Nix. So he's got a verified 6 foot 1.7 inches, 220 pounds. Came over from Auburn, right? He was just disastrous at Auburn, just frantic in the pocket, just couldn't get his feet going. Goes over to Oregon, just switches up. It's a whole new scheme. Obviously, a lighter defenses. It's Pac-12. I think they played. I know this year they played only one top 50 defense this year. 60% of his passing yards came off of yak from his wide receivers, as well as just a lot of manufactured stuff. So I think he's fine in the pocket when he's kept clean. I just don't like when he's pressured, and I don't think that changed a lot at Oregon. We saw it happen much less. And then his arm, I think, is also not like, it's just average. It's fine. It's not bad. It gets it done, but it's not something that you're going to really hang your hat on. You're not going to say, yeah, Bo Nix has the tools. He is a very opportunistic rusher, though. So I think he's got some mobility there, which is kind of how today's NFL is heading towards. But besides that, like, I think he just holds on to the ball. I don't really know how. I honestly wanted to go back to get a new, like, just refresh my opinion on his processing, because I didn't really think as much of a processor, but I wanted to go back and just solidify that opinion.
Yeah. So to defend my pick here, the NFL also drafted someone like Drew Lock in the second round, and I think they're kind of similar players in a sense. But yeah, there are a lot of the deficiencies you've noted, I've noted as well, right? I compared his happy feet to Mitch Trubisky, if you remember his first couple of years with the Bears, just absolute happy feet, couldn't keep his feet still whatsoever. He also couldn't throw left, which I don't think is a Bo Nix problem, but Trubisky was a mess because of those mechanics. So, that's something that's on the line there. But I will say this, he changed almost everything about his motion when he got to Oregon. At Auburn, he had this like very much kind of sidearm, little shaky delivery. He very much solidified it by going a little bit higher and making it more compact. So it's kind of like a 1230, but also just like a little bit more. It's a shorter motion. It's more circular, if that makes sense. So I think it's gotten better. He's made pretty marked improvements, I think. Another thing is I think he takes care of the ball a little bit better. Part of that is that motion. When it's more compact, it's going to be more direct. But some of the old Bo Nix still pops up every once in a while where he holds on to the ball way too long, right? And there's this thing where if he's in the pocket, sometimes he'll bail early if he sees the opportunity to create a better play than the play that was called. I don't know if you noticed that in some of those games, but especially in Washington, right? And I also wish, he was a little bit taller and a little bit of stronger arm. Like if he had some like plus arm talent, like kind of like what Drew Lock had, right? Drew Lock had some pretty good arm talent there. Arm talent being arm strength specifically.
Arm strength.
Yeah. We had that portion. Yeah. We had that debate in the Slack not too long ago. And I was told I was a little bit too didactic on that. So anyway, but I will say his playmaking is interesting because he bails the pocket too early sometimes, but I think he does a really good job of throwing on the run. He does this thing where he realigns his hips and shoulders really well right before he throws it. Like even if he's facing the wrong direction, he has a way of creating rotation back to his throwing stance in order to get that ball out. And so like even throws that you're like, ooh, that wasn't a great throw, you shouldn't have thrown it there, come out much better than expected because he realigns it better there. And so I think, I know a couple buddies of mine on Twitter and stuff have said like, oh, Bo Nix is the perfect Sean Payton quarterback. I don't necessarily disagree, although, I thought, I forget who it was, but someone made a quick comment that we are actively seeing Sean Payton age out of the NFL. And so that's interesting, but I think Bo Nix might be a fit at Denver. But I think it's more promising than some of the other guys on this list is what I will say. And that's why I think the NFL will draft him in the second round. Not that I necessarily think he's worth a second round pick, but I think the NFL will value his skill set enough to be in the second round.
My initial draft grades are all on Twitter. I'll probably repost them pretty soon too. I definitely go back and redo them after the Senior Bowl to put notes in there. I gave him a 5.08 out of 10, which gives him a mid day 3 grade.
Yeah, and to be fair, the most quarterbacks get drafted on day 3, right? There,
Yeah.
a lot of them get camp invites. If you remember, the Steelers drafted Chris Oladokun from UConn, who no one had really ever heard of, and he was immediately cut after rookie camp. Right? He was just there for rookie camp arms.
There's some
So,
weird ones. The Penn
yeah.
State QB got drafted in the 4th last year. That was wild. I can't remember who that
Sean
was.
Clifford.
Yeah, was he
Yeah,
in the 4th
that
round pick to Green Bay? That was wild.
yeah, no real NFL level skills to speak of, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year was the most quarterbacks drafted in the last decade, just across like total.
Which is interesting, right? We're talking about this quarterback group right now. Last year at the Senior Bowl, they had to literally stop practice and tell defenders to only go 75% so that the offense could practice things.
Yes.
It was a mess. These quarterbacks could not get the ball out. They couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. And it's also interesting because while most of them, the most quarterbacks drafted in the last decade, there was also the most rookie quarterbacks getting a start all time or something. I think that was a stat that was floated out there.
DeVito's out there getting W's somehow for
Tommy DeVito, another guy that we were like, oh, not really pro level traits if we're really honest with ourselves. And to be fair, injury, but yeah, so I think it's an interesting conversation to have as well. But we're talking about Go ahead.
I just want to make some closing thoughts on Bo Nix before we move on to him. He had the second lowest ADOT among all Power 5 quarterbacks. I do want to say this though, I'm a little harsh on him, but he's a system QB, and I thought he ran the system extremely efficiently. That still has a place in the NFL. I actually don't know Barnabas's opinion about Brock Purdy, for example. I don't think Brock Purdy's got a lot of tools or traits, but he's running a system, and he's running it pretty well. And I think there's spots for it. I think Jared Goff's system QB, Kirk Cousins is. You can even say Tom Brady was, but he was the system. It was his mind. It wasn't the OC. But, there's system QBs that are successful still in the NFL, and they have a lot of longevity. And I think Bo Nix is a system QB. So maybe I might care a little bit more depending on where he goes. But for the most part, I'm good.
And look, we're looking at these guys in a vacuum. But no, I agree with you, right? If you watch Brock Purdy really closely, he very rarely gets to a second or almost never a third read, right? He's almost always just throwing with his first read. Which, fair, that system doesn't need a second or third read. But that's not something that we can evaluate for in advance if we don't know what system they're going to. Speaking of system quarterbacks, I had Michael Penix as the second best quarterback at the Senior Bowl this year. I don't love Michael Penix for a multitude of reasons. I know a lot of people love him because of his production. He put up 491 yards against Ohio State that one time. Is that right? Something like that. It was crazy. Yeah, it was nuts when he was still playing for Indiana. But there's just a multitude of things that I just can't get on board with, right? He's a lefty number one. I have been very vocal about how I dislike lefty quarterbacks, mostly because I think NFL and college wide receivers have to adjust to a different spin on the ball. And I think it's not as easy as people would like to think, people chalked it up when Michael Vick was doing it to, Michael Vick is just throwing lasers in there, which fair, he was doing that. But another point is that the ball is spinning the wrong direction. When you're catching, deeper balls, it's tailing a different direction than you're used to. Similar to how a lefty slider comes in a different direction than a righty slider, right? That's what I equate it to, right? It's just tailing in a different direction. So once you get used to it, it's fine. But can you switch from a righty to a lefty often? I wouldn't say so. And on top of that, he had 2 ACL injuries. He missed both 2018 and 2020, I want to say, with ACL injuries. Plus, he dislocated his throwing shoulder in 21 and had SC joint problems throughout his career. That's a lot of injury history for a guy who's really built very slim and who's not really a functional mover anyway. So he needs to be able to throw. He can't lean on another trait. I will say he does have some things going for him in that he does have a very compact motion, which is very good because, I was, Cowboys fan, right? Tony Romo, but more importantly, Dan Marino, Drew Brees. These guys were always known for their time to release, right? Which is not time to throw. That's a little bit different, right? That's time to throw is snap to throw. Time to release is from the moment they decide to throw it, the ball going back and the ball coming forward, right? And I think Michael Penix is for someone who has such long arms, he has very good time to release, which is notable, and so I think that he does need to fix some mechanical stuff, right? I think he doesn't rotate his hips enough. So like while his deep balls look good in college, I don't think it's NFL level juice on those balls yet. And everyone loves his functional mobility, quote unquote out. I'm not gonna get on board with that. It's bad. He's not a great mover. But everything we've heard says that he's a plus leader. He's even on bad teams, he was leading these guys into battle. And he has plenty of intangibles. Toughness is maybe not one of them, but resilience is, to be fair. And so he in tenacity, he always bounces back. So I think his plus accuracy in the short and intermediate routes will play in Mobile, and he will get some play off of that.
Yeah, talking about mobility here, my co-host Corey Pereira over at Back to Debbie always says he's a pocket navigator. Like that's it. He just navigates. He's not a good mover. And I don't really expect him to either with those two ACLs. I don't really think that's like it's a part of his profile. There was a drop off in like production. I want to say like week 5 to like the conference championship where it was just a lot of one score wins rather than seeing like him just put up video game numbers. I don't have much to say. I think ball placement's a little bit overrated for him. I think his receivers have excellent like receiver play. I'm talking about Rome Odunze, Jalen Pope. Both those guys are very good at body adjustment, ball tracking, great hands. I think they kind of bail him out on a few throws. So that's really all I have to add. I also the same like draft capital on him. I think he's a 3rd round pick. I think that's like when the teams miss on like the premium picks and you got like, I don't know, let's say like the Falcons. I think the Falcons are picking 8 overall, so they're going to miss the top 3. I think the Falcons could pick up Penix in like the 2nd or 3rd and be happy. Like, all right, just give me a quarterback for like 2 or 3 years and we'll try to make the best out of it. But I think Barmer's kind of nailed everything else down.
Yeah, and well, to be fair, so the counterpoint to your wide receiver argument there, those 3 wide receivers, while good, are not great separators, to be fair. And so that ball placement did matter at Washington. But, I think it's telling when even at the beginning of the game against USC, they were just pounding that ball with Dylan Johnson and not, throwing the ball around the yard, which both methods would have done fine against that USC defense. I think we can all agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's thrown behind the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, kept him very clean. Troy, I can't say his last name, but
Fautanu, yeah.
Yeah, Fountainu was phenomenal in pass protection. Probably, I think he's gonna be a 1st round talent. We'll see. But I got some disagreements on Jalen McMillan, but that's not really what's on this show. So we'll talk about him being a separator later. But the other 2 guys, absolutely, I do not think they are route running savants.
Yeah. But yeah. The next guy on the list is Michael Pratt. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Very interested in Michael Pratt. When we initially did this show, we're only picking out specific names. That was the only name that I was actually truly interested in seeing here in Mobile. I think he's got he has like the arm, he has the build. He's basically like G5 Will Levis to me. Like he has all the tools. Very, really very, good. Yeah, just very, very inconsistent. And like he's got some big wins on his resume. Like it's not like he just crumbles against better competition. But like this last year was a little bit hard to watch. Like this past year was hard to watch. So I know we sometimes talk about like the environment over in Mobile. You just talked about how like they had to tell the DBs to cool down for like 75% to help like actually get plays going. Michael Pratt has one player with him. Anyway, there's no chemistry. Like he doesn't really know how these players move. He doesn't have like a preset like, oh, I know how like Ryan Florney like knows how to like out of his breaks. Like it's there's just no like predefined like he's not going to have this chemistry. So it's a little bit hard to like really like I think evaluate timing on some of these guys. But anyway, Michael Pratt's the biggest mystery to me in this draft. I love the tools. I agree with the draft grade you have here because I think tools gets you late day 2 draft capital at the minimum. So
yeah, I really like that Levis comparison. That's pretty much where I was at. Where I will say like he's big and strong, right? Like he's built. He's roughly listed at the same dimensions as both Bo Nix and Michael Penix, right? They're all roughly the same size, but Michael Pratt just feels bigger and feels sturdier, right? He's supposedly the same height and maybe 2 pounds lighter than Michael Penix, and he's like only an inch taller and like 6 pounds lighter than Bo Nix.
I'm looking at the verified sizes here. He's the exact same height as Penix and 2 pounds lighter.
Yeah, that's just I mean, he feels sturdier, right? Penix looks like a twig out there, and Pratt feels like a guy that you could tackle and he'll get up. You know,
Yeah.
the next play. He has a very traditional 3/4 motion. If you talk about arm slots, right? I know my video is mirrored right now. I'm not a lefty, but he has that very traditional arm slot that you expect from the guys that you were watching in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? Yeah, think like you're kind of like Kurt Warner styles. And I think Kurt Warner was 3/4. Don't yeah. Don't call me for that one. But I think that his mechanics are, while good, are almost too good. And by that I mean he has a little bit of rigidity to his play. Like you can see it working through his brain where he's like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, and like he's like, okay, like shoulders perpendicular to the line of scrimmage have to end parallel to the line of scrimmage, right? You can almost see those things running through his head like a checklist. And I think that rigidity saps power because his lower half just becomes delayed because he's thinking about it too much. I don't know if you saw that at all. So I did notice that while his horizontal accuracy is generally pretty good, his vertical accuracy, so like, depth, he really struggled with that at times. And I think just part of it is just like he's not getting the strength he needs from his lower body to connect that into his hips and then up to his shoulder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But all that being said, I think he has pretty decent ball trajectories. They usually come in at the right time at roughly the right height. It's interesting, right? Because like Russell Wilson is considered one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL, and Kyler Murray is probably the worst in the NFL, right? I think analytics backs me up on that one.
I don't know if Russell Wilson still has that, but at one point in time, yeah.
At one point, you're right.
Yeah.
Right. Russell Wilson has that like drop in the bucket trajectory, right? It comes all the way up and then rainbows back in, and it comes almost vertically into receiver's hands. That's why DK and those guys were so successful, because they were just taller. And so it's like, okay, this angle makes more sense on the excuse my nerdity. The kurtosis is cut off earlier with a taller height, right? But Michael Pratt has a more traditional, rainbow arc where it's more of it's a flatter curve that is more traditional to like your Peyton Mannings and your Tom Brady types, where it's coming in more directly. And so I will say a lot of it is very traditional, and coaches I think will latch onto those as tools. I don't know if it's necessarily plus tools, but it's there in terms of just as something that coaches will latch onto. So yeah. The next guy that we're talking about, I needed to talk about something tangentially here, and you can see on the show sheet, and I know you're laughing a little bit. Yeah. Spencer Rattler. What happened to Spencer Rattler? This was the 2018 Elite 11 QB winner. And I just wanted to run down the list of other guys on that list and see where they landed, right? I think it's an interesting play. So we have Bo Nix on that list. The guy we talked about 3 spots ago. Jaden Daniels, who's likely the 3rd quarterback off the board in this very draft class.
Absolutely.
Graham Mertz, who was starting for Florida. Is he still Florida starter next year? I don't know.
Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah. What was it? Milk Peyton Manning? Is that what Felix called him? Anyway, that's at one point. Sam Howell, who started for the Washington Commanders this past year, and a couple guys who don't even play the position anymore, and Isaiah Williams and Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson is now the running back for the Bears, and Isaiah Williams is at the Shrine Bowl right now as a wide receiver. We have Dylan Morris, who just transferred out of Washington, finally after all these years. Taulia Tagovailoa, Max Duggan. There was a big storyline with Ryan Helinski, whose brother had passed away not too long ago. So that was a big recurring storyline during that Elite 11 coverage. UAB starting quarterback Jacob Zeno, Grant Gunnell, Zach Calzada, who is I think at a Incarnate Word, is that right? And Kate McNamara. I just went through this list and I was like, every single guy I know for some reason or another. And it's long ago enough that some of these guys should have faded in obscurity. And I just think, what happened to Spencer Rattler that he's not even better than what he is right now?
Dude, what a camp. I mean, we all know all those guys. They've all been talked about in C2C at some point in time. That's a crazy list. Is Roschon Johnson I didn't know he was a quarterback to start. I was like, thought you were talking about Jaquindon Jackson from
No, I literally copied it straight off Elite 11's website.
Wow.
But yeah, Roshan Johnson, I did know was a quarterback, but he's built, so we have no questions about him being as a quarterback. But that was wild to me, truly. But anyway, back to Spencer Rattler. I like Spencer Rattler as an NFL guy.
Okay.
I just don't know if I like him. I like all the things shoulders down. I don't know if I like everything above the shoulders, if that makes sense, right?
No, yep, that makes sense to me. I'm with you on that one for sure. 100%.
Like plus arm strength, that guy can zip that thing. Like 40 yards downfield, he's overthrowing most like guys, if not on target, right? Like he is not missing short on these guys. He has a good release and pretty decent accuracy, both horizontal and vertical. That offense did him no favors. Juice Wells was hurt all year. We'll talk about the guy he was throwing to, but Juice Wells was hurt all year. He's clearly scarred by past, I don't say this lightly, past traumatic plays, right? If you look at him, he's remembering some play in his brain, and that's why he holds onto the ball for a second and doesn't just zip it in there at times. Or he'll see something and go, oh crap, I threw a pick on this very coverage before. And you can see him hesitate with that. And that just like, or he'll be like, oh, I threw a pick because I threw this ball late. And so he'll throw it too quick sometimes. It goes both ways, but I just see the timing is always off with him for some reason or one reason or another. And I think it's just like past ghosts haunting him. What do you think?
I'm with you there. I think he holds on to the ball too much. I do think it's generally just like whole college trait, like across the board. People just like to hold on to the ball and take sacks. It's something they learned in the NFL to do better. I quoted like Bo Nix having the second lowest ADOT among Power 5 starters. Spencer Rattler's number 4, which is weird because, like you said, like he has the arm talent. He can sling it deep. They just don't. Also, they don't really have one warm body worth throwing to in that room. So there's also that. And I thought he just locks on. I don't think he makes his reads. It's either fellow Xavier Legette gets open or he doesn't. And like, that's it. He takes a sack. So it's like big player sack each time. So I don't think he's there as a processor. As far as also other stuff in the head, I don't think he's a good locker room guy. So there's a lot of hot-headedness stuff. Yeah, there's bad reports out of Oklahoma. And I didn't hear anything positive out of South Carolina really disparaging that either. So I think it's going to come to the interviews. And so we look at guys that are like you put them down as third, fourth here, right? Like I don't think, and like when you factor in that to like the day 3 type players, I think NFL teams will be like, we'll just skip over him. We'll wait another round. So I don't think that's a guy that they're going to want in the locker room. He's not really much of a leader. So that's my only additional to what you said. The arm strength is there, but it clearly wasn't, like, to me, used properly at South Carolina. So
yeah, I mean, okay, you keep using ADOT as this measure, but like ADOT doesn't mean bad performance or like bad production,
related.
Right?
It could be scheme related. Yeah. Which for him is what I don't think really is. Like, I think he has a talent, but like with Bo Nix, for example, I don't think Bo Nix really has that good of a deep ball. And I don't think the other guy on the list is Graham Mertz, who you mentioned earlier. Graham Mertz, I don't think can throw the ball deep either. And then number 3 is like Cade Klubnik, another guy that I don't think really can throw the ball deep. But generally speaking, yeah. Okay.
Hear me out. I think we need to use ADOR over ADOT, if that makes sense. Okay. And hear me out, right? I think average depth of reception probably has at least an additional nuance to it. Do you know who was the lowest ADOT quarterback? Not this season because I didn't check, but last season it was Will Rogers.
Well, okay, yeah, I actually think I did know that. Yeah. Anyway, but
yeah, he had what, second most yards in the SEC or something like that, and had the lowest ADOT, right? So like,
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean that much for a quarterback. I think it has a lot more to do with, like you said, scheme, but also like, I don't know that we can necessarily say like, oh, that makes him a bad quarterback, because at the end of the day, low ADOT can still result in a whole mess of yards, whether it's because the scheme encourages yak yards or whether it's just like a quick hitter thing type, deal. I don't know. But I don't know that we can use ADOT as a real criticism of quarterbacks. I'm just saying.
I'm not a real stat head. I do think it has some sort of context to it, obviously, with scheme. I think we're getting a little bit too into the weeds here with it, though. But I do think quarterbacks that can't throw the, like, if you don't have a guy who can throw the ball deep, I don't really think it's going to go to the NFL. I think the deep ball is just so important. at least to get it down there to have the arm strength for it. I think it shows limitations to even like a project. It's not a high ceiling guy, not worth an investment in some of them.
Sure. Okay. Fair. Well, we can talk about someone who doesn't have a low A dot next.
Okay.
Which is Joe Milton. He has an A dot of 10.4, which is third highest in the Senior Bowl class. First being Michael Pratt, and second being Michael Penix. So, interesting note there. But do you have anything on Bazooka Joe, Chris K's first love?
Yeah. I thought I watched him lose the starting job to Hendon Hooker, who ended up being a third round pick. Comes in, has like 2 really nice games in the season. Saw prominent NFL draft analysts tweet out this is the most talented player I've ever seen before. Just to fall on his face all year. I think he's a good athlete. It wasn't really shown on the field this year too much, which was kind of weird to me. I think he broke off one big run the entire year. But otherwise, like he can run. He's a better athlete than what they let him do. He can get the ball deep. You just don't know what zip code is going to go to. So I think he struggles with accuracy and ball placement. I also think he's trying to struggles with processing. I do think, and I can't quote numbers here. I know people like quoting numbers, but I think they asked him to throw it short a little bit more often than I liked because they just wanted to make it easier for him to make reads. But again, he has the long arm. He's going to be an older prospect. But as far as like processing, I don't know. I don't know. He's an old dog. I don't know if an old dog can learn new tricks at this point. He just hasn't really improved much there.
You know, we say he's old, and I also have noted on here that he's old. He's actually only 23. He was born in 2000. Oh. So that's something. He spent so many years in college. He's only 23, which is kind of wild to think about. Penix, I believe, is 24.
Okay.
Maybe don't quote me on that. But I think Penix is also old. He's went through COVID year, plus he had an ACL year. He's been in college forever, so Penix is also old, but Milton you expect to be like 26 by now, and he's only 23. So I'm just saying we can pump the brakes on that one a little bit, but there's plenty to criticize here. Okay, so this is Chris K's first love before he fell in love with JJ McCarthy, who was a little more successful, right?
Maybe.
Bazooka Joe. He's a pretty decent runner. I'll talk about Josh Heupel's offense later, right? But It's a weird offense because they split the rushing load always. Like the most that Josh Heupel has given workload. Yeah, workload to his running back one has been like 55% of the carries. It's pretty low. That's pretty low, right? Like if you want to put that in perspective, like Bijan, I think was somewhere in the world sphere of like 70% of the workload, right? So like that is 55 is the highest ever, and I think that was at UCF.
We're talking about Mami Vidal a little bit later. He's like 90% of like Troy's rushing yards.
Yeah, total yards, maybe even like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so things that I noticed, right? So this offense is entirely predicated on like very much horizontal spacing. And it's very obvious, and it works a lot of the times in that too many teams are focused on vertical spacing, which like teams like Alabama where they run that banjo system, right? Instead, you have horizontal spacing, which is why Tennessee had so much success last year against Alabama. Obviously, they fixed it this year, but point being, there are some redeeming qualities to this offense. However, Joe Milton kind of struggled in there. He has inconsistent arm angles. He's always trying to minimize extension, it feels like, where Penix does a pretty good job of keeping that rotation pretty small. Joe Milton's 6'5", right? The guy is long. I think he even has longer arms proportionately than the other guys we've talked about so far. And so when he tries to keep that release short and compact, he has to do it in such a way that he's coiling his arm that it's inconsistent coming out. It doesn't look like a smooth motion. And so I just don't see the ball coming out at a consistent like angle out, even off of his hand. And so I think, you're right. There's a slow processor. He lacks creativity. He only throws the ball where he's supposed to, which to be fair, so does Brock Purdy. So, who am I to say? But no creativity. He really has to see the receiver open before he can throw it. He doesn't have that anticipation to be like, okay, if I throw it here, he will be open by that point. And so therefore, which is like the epitome of NFL throws, and which is something that Brock Purdy is very good at, to be fair, right? And I don't see that with Joe Milton. He can really zip that thing in there, Bazooka Joe for a reason, but and to be fair, because he has such a good arm, he can zip it in there late sometimes. I just don't see an NFL team that's going to use him as a starter anytime soon. If someone wants to take those tools and, put him as a Terrell Pryor or to just develop those skills over time. Okay, he's 23, so he's not as old as we say he is, but he's still 23, which is on the older side, to be fair. So a lot of things to consider there, I think. I think you're muted, Bo.
Just hit me with the mental flashbang there with Terrell Pryor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have him down as my grades reflect him as a late day 3 type guy. I think he's a scout team, and we don't see him on Sundays ever. So that's what I think he's destined for.
Yeah, and I have him as what, a 4th or 5th rounder guy here, and I think it's just the crazy arm, and I think because he can run it a little bit, someone will take him around there. And you know what? Like, if someone like Baltimore wants to take him, they're like, you know what? Snoop Huntley might ask for too much money. We need another backup that can run it. Like, maybe. I don't know. Who am I to say? But that offensive system also not super predicated on like the most accurate throws, which is okay. Like, I'm not saying Lamar Jackson is bad. Everyone calm down. Put your pitchforks down. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson is bad. I'm saying that offense doesn't necessarily need the most accurate throws because they kind of rely on a lot of like, let's beat press man coverage. Let's allow some rack going on and stuff. So maybe a system like that, Joe Milton can be a little bit more successful. That's all I'm saying.
Ready to move on to Sam Hartman?
Oh, you have some pressing opinions on Sam Hartman?
I don't have pressing opinions. I feel like I was one of his champions to start off the season, honestly, compared to the industry. But 6'1", 210. Sam Hartman comes over from Wake. Wake runs a very specific scheme. It's a mesh scheme, a lot of fast tempo type stuff, very fast pace. And I was very hopeful for him coming over to Notre Dame. I think they run more of a pro style offense. And I was like, we give this guy time to process. He can probably, I think, cook a little bit better than what he did at Wake Forest. And I think he did not cook. He simmered. He actually did not cook. I thought, like, he doesn't have an NFL arm. I don't really think, like, how people use the word arm talent. We kind of used it earlier today. I don't think he has NFL arm talent, accuracy, or ball placement, strength, all that. I think it's a little bit below average across the board. And then even making reads, I don't really think he's that good of a processor where I thought he would have excelled at in the Notre Dame system. So I didn't have a lot to say as I don't know what his place is in the NFL, but I was kind of surprised he got the invite, to be honest with you, not to be terrible.
Well, they're one fighting the Shrine Bowl. Shrine Bowl got some decent guys as well this year.
He was poached from the Shrine Bowl, actually.
Right. So, but yeah, you're right. He really threw stuff in a crock pot and expected us to call it cooking, right? Like, and so the first thing that comes to mind when I looked at Sam Hartman was hero ball, right? Bo Nix has a little bit of this too, where he wants to be the hero. He wants to create something out of nothing. Sam Hartman does it to a crazy extent. He has to be the hero, which, to be fair, he was the hero at Wake Forest. For those of you that don't know, that Dave Clawson system, that slow mesh, there's only 2 routes that they ever throw. It's either like a quick slant or something, or it's a deep fade. That's all they throw. There's only 2 routes in the entire playbook. They run that slow mesh, see where the defense is going, and just do the opposite thing, right? Like, it's an uncomplicated, but to be fair, very productive concept. Fair. Okay, so we like that he went to Notre Dame, that he said he was going to cook. He threw things in a crock pot. Decision makers will at least look at the crock pot and go, you know what? You tried. Like, you followed a recipe somewhere. You tried. We'll give it to you. And I think part of that is I'm someone that says this a lot. He looks like an NFL quarterback.
Good beard.
He's got the beard, and he's got other traits that make him look like an NFL quarterback. I'm just gonna leave that there. I agree with you. I think he has below average arm strength. He has fine accuracy. It's not amazing, but it's fine. It works. And I will give him this. While he's a slow processor, he will get to the correct throw a majority of the time. He will get there eventually. It's not fast, and he's not going to get there maybe on time, but he will get to the correct throw at some point. And following that, he has a good sense of like when to pull it down, which I think is part of that hero ball thing, where as soon as it starts breaking down, he's like, I'm going to get that 4th and 15 first down. We saw exactly that. What was that? Notre Dame, was it? Yeah. Sorry, not Notre Dame. Against Duke, I think, was it? Where it was like a 4th and 15 and he just ran it the entire way or something. It was like, that was like the epitome of hero ball, right? Like, That's what I see when I see Sam Hartman. Like he is that guy. And so like he in his mind, he has that main character energy, if you will. That's apparently that's what the kids say these days. I really had to throw that one in there, but you know.
He's the protagonist. I do agree with your assessment though. He's 6th, 7th rounder. I also have the same grade on him, so I'm with you on that. Locked in step.
Yeah, and so now we come to our what is it? Our diversity hire, like basically, in Carter Bradley. He's the guy that they threw in there from University of South Alabama because they are hosting the Senior Bowl and contractually obligated to have at least one South Alabama player every year. If it was me, I might have invited LaDamian Webb and seen if he was available, but that's just maybe I'm wrong. But Carter Bradley is the guy. Have you watched any tape on Carter Bradley?
I spared myself and did not.
That's a fair assessment. So you mentioned somewhere like Atlanta for who was it? For Penix, was it, I think?
Yeah, for Penix.
Carter Bradley reminds me of current Atlanta quarterback Desmond Ridder.
Jeez.
Hear me out.
I'm
And there's only one specific trait that really reminds me of him, but he's the last person I remember with the ridiculously wide base. I've never seen a quarterback decide to spread his legs so wide in order to try to throw the ball. Like it's mind blowing. I don't know why he does it, but he is basically trying to do the splits out there as he tries to throw the ball, which leads to one, inaccuracy, but two, he can't get any power on that ball because his hips are locked. There's just no rotation whatsoever in his body. He's trying to rotate his torso and it's just not working. And so lots of passes wide and a lot of passes short is what I saw. And all things considered, you know, Cullen Lacey was a little bit of a CFF darling this year. That's Cullen Lacey's stock all the way up after watching this tape because man,
Really?
Carter Bradley was not
him.
Yeah, Carter Bradley was not putting him in good spots. So, you know, he's an average runner. I wouldn't say he's making anyone miss, but if the field is open, he can take some Jared Goff runs here and there.
Runner.
Yeah, opportunistic running. My only problem is he doesn't trust his first read. He'll go from his first read, be like, oh, I don't think it's there. Go to his second read and be like, actually, without even finishing processing that second read, he'll go back to the first read. Like, actually, I think that was open. And then he'll go back to his third read and be like, oh, no, that's not open. And then try to go back to his first read again. It's like, oh, actually, I think that was open the first time I looked at it. It's like, you gotta progress through your progression. Like it's called a progression because you go 1, 2, 3, not 1, 2, 1, 3, 1. Like that's not how it works. And so I think that people need to calm him down. Someone needs to teach him the offensive progression and to like have him slow down the game for himself. That's all. Like I think he at the very least will get a camp invite. I don't know where, but he'll get a camp invite somewhere. I wouldn't count on him being a fantasy producer anytime soon. But, you know, he's 6'3", 217, and he's white. So he'll probably end up in camp somewhere.
Looks good in shorts, Barners, please. Looks good in shorts.
Good shorts. Okay, yeah. He's a hard worker, yeah.
First in, last out type of guy. Good locker room presence.
Yeah. Really studied the playbook. Sent the $100 bills back, $100 bill back, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go to running backs. I know you had some thoughts on my first guy on this list.
I did have some stronger thoughts on this one. Jalen Wright, running back from Tennessee, very efficient. I can't remember his numbers off the top of my head, but if you look at his like yards per carry, it's like 6.5, something very high, especially for SEC competition. Barnabas already talked about how Tennessee does a very even split in their backfield. I thought he's a very upright runner, like extremely upright, kind of lacks that strength. Like he has power back workhorse size, but he certainly doesn't exhibit like any of those traits. I don't really think he's like breaking tackles based off of physicality. I just think he takes very good angles, follows his hole, follows his blocks. And then as like an athlete too, I don't think he has that top gear speed either. So it's hard for me to like say what I like the most about him. I just think he does stuff pretty well, but like I don't know why he's so stiff, dude. I don't know why he doesn't want to sink his hips or lower his pad level. Like he has the size. He's got big arms. I mean, I can see it on tape. Like he's built. He goes to the gym. He's like the athletic training over there is pretty good. So I do think though he's one of the better guys at avoiding the ankle wrapping tackles. I do think he picks his legs up pretty well. I think the best running back I've ever seen do that type of stuff was Kenneth Walker, who just really got picking up that off foot, avoiding the ankle tackles. But I thought he did a very good job at that too. But as far as like actually breaking tackles to get good grabs on him, I don't think he's very good at doing that type of stuff.
Yeah, so I rated him as my top running back at the Senior Bowl. As we've seen in the past, running backs at the Senior Bowl tend to get exposed a little bit because they're forced to like do pass protection in a vacuum, and a lot of the smaller guys really struggle. We saw
There's
Chase
no
Brown get run
hitting.
over. Yeah,
Yeah,
no
yeah,
hitting. Yeah.
no hitting.
Um, some Let me throw you some interesting stats that I saw in this class. Well, in this group, sorry, I should say, of Senior Bowl running backs. Jalen Wright has the highest yards after contact per attempt at 4.35. The next highest was Isaiah Davis at 3.9. Or sorry, no, it was Marshawn Lloyd at 3.97. A full third of a yard away of yards after contact. That's pretty big for someone who didn't. So someone might argue, okay, low volume means you break off one run, you get a lot more of that. Okay, fine. That argument also goes to the fact that he has the third highest yards per route run as well on, what was it, 22 receptions. Okay, fine. Well, I'll give you that, to be fair. But, all things considered, I liked Jalen Wright's tape a lot, even though he was low volume. And I think I for a couple very short reasons, right? Which is that he has experience. If you look at his like zone versus gap splits, like they're pretty even. I think he has scheme versatility. I think that spacing also allowed for the highest explosive play rate. But I think he's good for yards, despite the fact that despite his volume being low, he never got into a rhythm, but he's good at finding the holes when they're not there. Like you're saying, you noted on here, he needs holes open for him, but I
Yeah.
think what he does is he takes advantage of the holes that are there, right? Which is kind of the same thing, but a little bit different, right? I just think that NFL team is going to say, you know what, the run needs to be blocked for you anyway. Running backs need to win at the second level. The first level needs to be the offensive lines battle. The second level needs to be the running backs battle. And so once we get to there, I think Jalen Wright has that, because once he's in the open field, he can just run. He doesn't need to be super pads low. And so I think it'll be very specific, where I think we're looking at a movement of NFL teams going to stables of running backs. And I think Jalen Wright fits in pretty easily as at least a 2 and maybe even a 3. Like, or like at least a 3, sorry, maybe even a 2 here, where I think he can be a primary backup. He can take some Dearness Johnson type, everyone's injured, you're in, bud, type deals at the very least. But I think he can be the kind of guy where he's not necessarily a change of pace, but he's more of the same in running back 2. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I don't think he's a good second level runner. He doesn't have athletic traits. He doesn't make guys miss. He just, like, people put out their little fingers and like they call that tackle breaking. I think he had like 100 yards after contact against UConn, and it was like, I watched that. It was ridiculous that that counts as yards after contact too. I think he's very ordinary. I think he's just very, very ordinary.
I mean, he was breaking touchdowns every time I turned on the TV. That's all I know. Like, and to be fair, that offensive line was a good run blocking offensive line and bad pass blocking offensive line. Because
Yeah,
what was his name? Dylan Sampson? Not Dylan Sampson. Who was it? Their third running back was getting like 7 touchdowns or something.
Jabari Smalls.
Jabari Small was 2, running back 2, maybe.
No,
There was a
Samson's
third guy.
3. So if you consider
Samson,
Samson
yeah,
number
yeah.
3,
Yeah.
Okay. Also, only 4 touchdowns for Jalen Wright. So just saying, he's just not.
Samson took them all.
Yes, he did.
Samson had like 4 in one game or something.
He did. Yeah, early on too.
Yeah.
Early on. Anyway, so my grade for Jalen Wright, it's a late day 3. I have him as RB16 in the class, and usually about a little less than 20 get drafted each year. So puts into context.
Well, you told me you had Marshawn Lloyd higher. We can talk about Marshawn Lloyd now, because I
Okay.
think he's good, but I'm not willing to put him as like starter level. Here's why. He had that ACL freshman year.
Yep.
Right. And then he transferred from South Carolina, which he was never like top echelon even while he was at South Carolina. But you want to argue SEC defenses? Fine. Okay.
No, I don't. I'm not. Let me just get on this. I didn't like Marshawn Lloyd at all up until like this year. I was a very big Marshawn Lloyd hater, because since that ACL, like, his recovery took like 3 years. Usually, you like after like a year, you're like looking for him to come bounce back. He did not look like his high school profile all 3 years until he made it to the Pac-12, and it's just like a rotating backfield. So I see you wrote on your notes a little too bounce happy, and I actually like agree with that. I didn't write that in my notes, but I actually very much agree with that. But I thought, like, as far as laterally goes, I don't think there's a lot of lateral agility in this running back class as a whole, even outside the Senior Bowl class. but I thought like he actually showed some very good cutting ability, some very good open field vision. I do think he's weak, not soft. So I'm not saying like he avoids contact. I just don't think he survives it very often. And I'm not sure if they have his listed height somewhere, but I do believe like he's probably like 200 pounds flat. Kind of has smaller arms in the class. But besides that, like I think he's one of the better open field runners, which is kind of what the Senior Bowl more revolves around. They're open field runners. But anyway, I am not gonna post the SEC defense against his production in South Carolina.
Okay, that's fair. I think, to be fair, his ACL injury might have helped him in this way, in that he takes pretty short, choppy steps, which helps him in his change of direction, I think.
Okay.
And so I think he's not really a jump cutter, but he does have good change of direction. And then once he feels like his ACL is not in danger and he can take longer strides, once he opens up that stride, he really gets that open field speed out pretty good. So I think he can be a home run hitter, but I just don't see an NFL team trusting him to be like a 1 or a 2 even. I think he's like a change of pace kind of third back where it's like, okay, let's clean it up. It's the fourth quarter. We're up by 3. We need you to get 3 first downs here. Like type of deal. Yeah.
And I think he's like my stand for who's going to like be this year's Tyjae Spears. You know what I'm saying? Tyjae really only like his one move was that 1v1 against the linebacker from Pitt, where the Pitt linebacker made the correct read, undercut the route. And of course it's a 1v1. So since he's, the Pitt linebacker to undercut it, he just turned upfield and went north, which everyone lost it over on the internet. I think Marshawn Lloyd has that type of movement ability I think he can make money from doing one of those type of moves, and he has that type of ability. So, but
clearly I don't think he's bad. I put a 4th round grade on him. I think the NFL takes him at the 4th round. But I'm unsure. I haven't finished my rankings yet for the year. But I don't know where he is, but I think the NFL will take him at the 4th, just looking at his profile. Granted, I don't think this whole running back class is that good with, Braylon Allen and Trey Benson at the top. I think we can both agree those are the top 2, whatever order you have them in. And so, it's not as great class. And so the running backs probably start in round 2. So round 4 is by no means a dig at these guys. But a guy that I was not sure where to grade is Isaiah Davis, which I know I'm skipping over. We'll go back to Ray Davis in a second. I want to talk about Isaiah Davis. I'm just excited about this guy. This is a guy that you build a running back in a lab. This is the kind of dimensions you want, right? 6 foot, 225. I think those are verified numbers. He's just like, he looks like a running back. And he had insane production at the FCS level. I just wish he was a little bit better receiver. He didn't have a whole lot of experience, but he did take them to the house when he did. Like he took a couple of screen passes that I was like, oh, okay, I see you. Decent speed. This is from the same system that produced, Tucker Kraft. The Janke brothers are over at the Shrine Bowl right now. But I was impressed. 3.6 8 yards after contact, even though he's primarily running up the gut, right? But I think he's at his best on like an outside zone system, which is weird because you would figure that from like slimmer, fast guys. But Isaiah Davis, once he gets in the open field, he's harder to tackle and he's got decent finishing speed. And so, I don't love the way he holds on the ball. I think it's fumble prone. I said that about Tybo Rogers too. And I think he did have a fumble in his first 50 carries, like I said, but anyway, I liked Isaiah Davis. I just didn't know where to put him because even though I like him, I don't know where the NFL is going to put him. And so I put a 4th through 7th grade on him. So take that as you will. But we can go back to Ray Davis.
Hard to be wrong with that wide range, partner.
Day 3's for the scouts. That's all I'm saying. Day 3's for the scouts.
That's true. So he's 5'11", 227. That's verified. Or nope, excuse me, 6 foot. You got it right. 6 foot 227 is verified. I think Pierre Strong was his running mate 2 years ago.
That's right.
Back up there. 4th round pick to the Patriots. Shout out to the Patriots. Anyway, why do we grab these guys? Anyway, I actually didn't think the athleticism was there. I thought you gave him more credit for that. Like I think come combine time, he's running like a 4.55 to like a 4.6, which I know it's like not saying much. Like Kareem Hunt ran like a 4.6. But
that's running back fast, to be fair.
I think he's a little bit slow in the athletic department. I always have a hard time grading FCS running backs because you're watching their tape and you're just flying the Power 5, and that's what the Senior Bowl is all about anyway. So him and the other SEC running back we're going to be talking about later, I'm both excited to watch those two guys. But as far as power backs go in this class, I don't think Isaiah Davis is one of the top group guys that I'd rather want.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he is a power back. He has good yards after contact, but I think it's yards after contact on the outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have a solid opinion. I really do reserve all my FCS and lower opinion for these bowls. I think it's like really like these guys had the most to gain or lose.
But talk to me about your SEC running back then.
Ray Davis measured at 5'8.5", 216 pounds, so a little bit shorter than what we thought. He's older. You got him written down. 25 years old. Is that true?
Yeah. I
Okay.
read that somewhere and I was like, that's nuts because he spent what, 4 years at Vandy?
He spent 3 at Temple, 1 at Vandy, 1 at Kentucky.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Started at Temple, was a human joystick, had a really good true freshman season, ACL tear. So second year didn't do anything. Third year looked, to be honest, lethargic. Goes over to Vandy, kind of rehashes his draft capital, 1,000-yard rusher. I think he even cooked Kentucky too against us. I have a lot of the same notes. Oh, I'm actually looking at my notes, not yours. I think he's got some pretty good vision. I think he's got some nice soft hands too. He's a very decent pass catcher. And even just for the analytics people out there, I think he had over I want to say 17% receiving market share for Kentucky's passes. It's Devin Leary, but still that's an impressive number to have. I saw his movement ability was also very good too. I just have an issue with his injury history, like the ACL and plus the age. I know he was 25, but I knew he was older. I thought he was coming in 23, 24. I know he was 25. But he's an older prospect with injury histories. And I don't know if he has any special traits. So I don't know if teams really want to take much stock into that.
Yeah, at the rate people were talking about him, I thought he would have a lot more production than he does, which to be fair, he hit what, 1,100 yards this season? So he was good. But for a bowling ball type guy, I really expect more. And 5'9", 216, I don't even know who to compare that with. Mike Davis, I guess, that type of running back in the NFL. I'm not really sure. Obviously everyone saw he doesn't hit home runs, right? He's not a breakaway guy. He's gonna get you some yards, dirty yards in between. Maybe Marion Barber type. If he was, I don't know. I don't think he attacks defenders like Marion Barber either, right? Rest in peace. But with, like I said, with the approach that NFL teams are taking, where it's okay, we need a stable of 3 running backs that do something different or all the same thing. I think Ray Davis can be that something different. He can be that bowling ball type. I can tell you the Cowboys probably would have liked his physical running style on the number of 4th and 1s we failed this year. So, he has a place in the NFL. That's why I rated him where I did. And his receiving will also help in that, teams love that play action on 4th and 1, right? That play action leak to the tight end. Well, sometimes you can run that to the halfback and Ray Davis can be that guy. So I'm on board.
Had a very complete skill set. It's not like you think anything is elite, but you think he can check the boxes for everything.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you. Someone who is the opposite, but also doesn't check the box is Jawar Jordan. He is the lightest running back in this Senior Bowl class at 178. I don't know if that's verified, but 5'10", 178 is what I saw. I think this guy's built like a deer. He's kind of he's lean, but he has good play speed, explosive play speed. He really does. And there's that one play I think I saw against Georgia Tech where he just runs over a linebacker. He can do that every once in a while. So credit to him. He's a light guy, but he can run over a linebacker every once in a while. I just wouldn't expect him to do it every play. So I said decent contact balance for his size. But he's just real change of pace ability. I wouldn't call him a scat back, like your Tavon Austin type, but he's definitely someone that's oh, that's your speed, like a Felix Jones type back in the Cowboys days when we had Dash, Smash, and Tash, right? With Felix Jones, Marion Barber, and Tashard Choice, right? Tashard Choice is now the Texas running back coach, something like that, right? Yeah, he's a running backs coach somewhere and doing well for himself, or maybe Alabama. I forget where it is. Someone in the comments can correct me on that. But back in the days of Dash, Smash, and Tash, arguably Jawar Jordan's kind of that Felix Jones type. And so my only thing is that he runs a little bit high. He runs with his feet kicked back really high. And so if you grab his heel, if you dive and grab his heel, I think he's falling.
He runs like a track runner, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does a little bit. And that just bothers me. I know it's not a functional thing really that we should care about, but I feel if you just touch his heel, he's going to trip and fall over himself. He's not super effective between the tackles, so he's just going to be that outside zone type guy. And obviously, he's going to need that rookie peanut butter. I always talk about that rookie peanut butter. The rookies always gain some weight when they get into the NFL, except for Mozzie Smith. And so, like, yeah, all those things good. I think he needs to. He runs kind of forward in that, like, he doesn't have great lateral movement. He's not a jump cut guy. He's going to be a lateral run parallel and then stick your foot in the ground and go hit that one gap, right? He's that guy, which for a smaller guy is like, you don't see it as often, but I think that's his role. And I think it works in like these, I would love to see him in like a Mike McDaniel or a Kyle Shanahan scheme where, everything works in harmony and like harmoniously, and that like motions work to create spacing and all that kind of jazz. And so I think Jawhar Jordan is that kind of guy.
I think he's like a discount version of Keaton Mitchell, the speedster that the Ravens took, undrafted free agent. I think he's similar to that. But like, I'm with you. He's just speed, and like today's NFL, when you got creative play callers, you're not going to believe in those guys with speed. Like, they're not going to be on the field for, I think, more than 20% of snaps. But like, he can be a boomer bust guy and a game breaking guy, and someone you can call on and takes him just one drive and he makes a difference in the game. So I think that's who Jawhar Jordan is.
Yeah, and Keaton Mitchell made an impact this year, right?
He did have like a handful of games there.
Yeah, so he was startable for a second there, and so we'll take that, right? Like I think Jawhar Jordan gets drafted. Like I don't think I think he's a better player than Keaton Mitchell. I think Keaton Mitchell was also a similar player with better speed, but I think Jawhar Jordan has better overall running back skills than Keaton Mitchell does. Also, I think he has 2 ACLs, which I think Keaton Mitchell didn't, if I remember correctly.
I'm not too confident on that one.
Tyjae Spears, I know for a fact, only had 1 ACL, but I think Keaton Mitchell also maybe tore an ACL at some point in his life. But yeah, moving on to slide 2 here, speed round, except for actually, let's not speed round quite yet because we want to talk about Kamani Vidal, right?
I'm not a big Vidal fan. I'm not a bowling ball build type of guy. So,
well, Felix is. Okay, I'll start with Kamani Vidal. I will say this. I don't love his NFL projection, but I will say he was that Troy offense. Right? Like he was the entire offense. I think he does. It's interesting because you expect a guy who's 5'8", 218 to just try to run over people, but he actually finds holes in open zones pretty easily. That was a very good run blocking offensive line, to be fair, but he's shiftier than you think. He was like, he's more of a gasher than like a bowling ball necessarily, right? He's short and thick, teapot build, but which makes him a good pass protector in the 5 snaps a game that Troy would pass the ball. But he angles his shoulders well through gaps. He's got those wide shoulders, but he fits through those gaps pretty well. And he wasn't asked to do it often, but he has fairly natural hands considering he has chicken arms. Or I guess T-Rex arms is the better term there. He has a little bit of T-Rex arm syndrome, but he catches the ball more naturally than you'd think. Even though he lacks the speed that, like, if you have Jawhar Jordan in space, he might take that to the house. Kamani Vidal, you're probably hoping to get a good chunk 20 yards out of or so. But more natural than I thought I would see coming out of him.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think he was there as an athlete. I do think he was shiftier, but I do feel like on the like NFL level, I think he can make those like the cut and like kind of make the first guy miss, but I don't think he has like the burst to really capitalize off space that he creates. And that was my issue with him. But like another guy just checks all the boxes, but I don't think he really but I don't think he's really much of an athlete. So another guy I'm looking forward to watch at the Senior Bowl to see how he compares against other NFL athletes. But he's more of a power back running style too. Like you just kind of mentioned he's shiftier, but he does have a power back running style too if you want to. We won't see that at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, we will not because they're not allowed to hit. All right, speed round, quick hitters. Daijun Edwards, really just a pass catching guy for Georgia. Yeah. He didn't really have much running stuff. To be fair, he'll squeeze every yard out of a play call, but he's not going to get any extra yards. That's just who he is. He's going to get what yards are there and no more, no less, but he's going to get that number and it's going to be something that coaches are going to value.
Real quick, is he better or worse than Kenny McIntosh came out last year, also Georgia pass catching specialist?
Indifferent.
Okay.
They're the same guy in my brain. Okay. I don't know whether fair or not. they're the same guy in my brain.
I think he's a little bit smaller, but yeah, I think they're basically the same guy pretty much. A little bit smaller. Another like late day 3 guy. Going over to Cody Schrader though, 5'9", 214 pounds, he got a vote for the Heisman. He got the same number of votes as JJ McCarthy for the Heisman. That's a fact.
Chris K.
Yeah, which was 1 vote. So anyway, high effort, low athleticism. I think I agree with that. He's a really gritty runner. I actually was I was a fan of the running back for Arizona State. He's not coming out this year, but this is who I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be a like really fun, like high effort type guy, like just all about physicality, not giving up ever, type of runner. And that's what Cody Schrader was. A death by 1,000 cuts too. His volume was just absolutely insane this year. So he's also, I think he's actually, I think he's going to be one of the older guys. I know you got Ray Davis here, is like 25 years old, but I think Cody Schrader is 24. So an older guy with more of a grinder type skill set. It's not really where the NFL is heading. And I don't think he's a plus athlete either. So I don't really care too much about the grinder skill set. He could be an early down back for an NFL team though, for a couple of years, but I think he's a death pick. And when it comes to those guys for fantasy, this is the NFL show, but for fantasy, like you're just, you keep him on there just in case there's an injury to the actual starter. But that's what I think Cody Schrader is.
Yeah, by my back of the napkin math here, he has 41 more carries than the next highest number of carries on this list. So,
Yeah.
277 is pretty absurd considering they threw the ball around a lot because they had Luther Burden on that team too. But yeah, Cody Schrader, thick boy, from Truman State, CFF darling, Truman State stand up. But yeah, I don't see real NFL promise for him. I just think a coach will like his, effort and stuff. Someone like Brian Robinson, who had this like reputation of just getting the first down, right? Like I think that'll be Cody Schrader at the next level. Rasheen Ali, sorry,
good locker room guy.
Yeah, locker room guy, glue guy, hard worker. Yeah. Rasheen Ali, I think the only thing to really talk about here is that he missed all of 22, and we still don't know why.
They came out. I think you have to dig it. I think you have to dig for it. He was injured. You have to dig for it. I think 24/7 broke it like way after the fact, and it was very annoying because it was like, why couldn't you guys just say that to start off? Because they outlined it as personal reasons, and then it came out that I think it was like an ACL injury, and then they're like, that's personal. I guess. I guess it can be.
Well, there's no way because he came back that same season at the very end.
I think it was like an early all-season injury. I don't like a spring injury.
I don't believe that. Maybe this is Austin's tinfoil hat leading off on me, but no way.
I also do not care. I think he's Sincere McCormick like all over again, and that's my comp for him. I think that's probably his also NFL projection. I do not care about Rasheen Ali.
Yeah, I will say this. He had 5.5 yards per carry on 509 carries over 3 years. That's a substantial volume and great efficiency. So I will give him that, even if he's playing in the Sun Belt. I think he can only play the zone schemes as well. So, and not really pass catcher, had some fumbles. I don't see, he was a CFF darling. I know he was like first or second overall in a lot of drafts the last offseason. I don't think he has an NFL future really, but he will probably land on a team.
Very interested in his measurables too. He didn't weigh in. He did not do the pre-weigh-in. So you think what he's listed at 6', 209. I would be very surprised if he's either that height and that weight. I think he's much lighter and much shorter.
So, yeah, he looked kind of small to me as well.
Very slim too.
All right. Yeah. Future Patriot?
Probably. I mean, Gerard Mayo's got my hopes up, so we'll see how the policies change. Yeah. But I know Bill will be salivating over this guy. So wherever Bill goes, maybe Bill takes this guy. But Dylan Lobb, 5'10", 203 pounds, another FCS running back from New Hampshire. Actually had a random follower put him on my radar last year. I think he's very smooth in transitioning after the catch. I think he's very smooth in that. I think that's probably his most defining thing that he does very well. Besides that, though, I don't think he's a plus athlete, and that's even at the FCS level. So I don't think I want to see him running at all on the NFL level. I see you wrote likely 4.6s. I would definitely agree with that too. Just kind of lacks overall just overall athleticism. But again, I think he's just such a reliable pass catcher. So I think he makes it to a roster, kind of like a spring camp type of guy. I'm not sure if we see him do much on the field, but pass catching change of pace.
Yeah, I mean, for a running back, 68 catches for 708 yards. That'll play. That's James White numbers right there, right? So I'm expecting him to be a future Patriot. that'll play. Like, to me, in my brain, like I said, Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards are the same guy. Like, Dylan Lobb and Lad McConkey are similar guys in my brain as well. Like, maybe that's unfair to Lad McConkey a little bit, but they're kind of just like the small white guy that runs routes pretty well. So we'll get to Lad McConkey. I do think he's a better player, but they're the same type of player is my point. And then finally wrapping up with Imani Bailey. I don't see a whole lot out of him either. I have him as UDFA grade. I know you, the Devi team, have a little bit of higher grade on him than I do. But to me, he's a high effort, positive athleticism, decent pass catcher, but I think a stiff breeze blows him over sometimes. He just doesn't have that contact balance. And I like what is his role? Like, he didn't seem to really thrive in gap or zone, maybe a counter scheme. I don't know exactly what TCU runs, but none of his, even the counters looked uncomfortable to him. I think he runs kind of funny. He has this like little bit of like a back and forth running style. And so I compared it to like a mini Bo Scarborough. If you look at old clips of Bo Scarborough running, he runs like kind of side to side a little bit. And so that's what but he transferred up from Louisiana, and I don't know if that's necessarily really transferring up at this point. Because considering the state that TCU was in this past year, but tell me about Imani Bailey, why I should be higher on him.
I actually don't have a grade for him. He's on my my next list to add to after the Senior Bowl here. But I thought he was a plus pass catcher. I didn't really value him yet as a runner, but I think he's just a plus pass catcher. I think the change pace back at the next level, and just like from like my like initial opinion, I thought maybe Chase Edmonds was like a ceiling comp for him. But again, haven't done a full look into him. But he's definitely on my list. And I think UDFA is a little harsh, but I do think he's a mid to late day 3 guy, like max.
Yeah, I just don't see a single skill where it's like he wins with this. I'm like, I don't know. Like,
okay,
we'll see.
Yeah, I won't argue with that.
Okay, yeah. Nate Marquise, this paging Nate Marquise. We are now moving on to wide receivers, and this is the entire reason why Nate Marquise was interested in this show. So, wide receivers, I started with Devontae Walker. Do you want to start with your take on him?
Yes, we might have very differing opinions about him. I actually not
okay.
Okay,
go ahead.
6 foot 1.6 inches tall with like a 200 flat, so a little bit shorter than we thought. He was listed at 6'3" at UNC. He was 6'2" at Kent State. Here, he has a colorful background. I think Nate's a little bit better at it. I need to get refreshed from Nate too before I head over to the Senior Bowl. Starts out going to NC Central, I believe. Has an injury before even going to college, just decided to not even go to college his first year, comes in second year. It's 2020. It's COVID. COVID shuts down the entire FCS. So doesn't play his first 2 years out of high school. Year 3 somehow transfers up to Kent State. Very excited to talk to him about that. And then year 4 is kind of where he picks up from high school. And that's kind of what his story is from there. So he's a plus athlete, got measured at 23 miles per hour on the field. I think he's got some very strong hands. I think like the stats don't say so, but like I think that was just, I don't know. They touch his hands, sure, but they're like kind of like in bad spots. So I think he's like a speed plus hands guy. I really do comp him to like a Mike Wallace type of player from the Steelers back in the day. A little bit taller, like an extra inch. But for the most part, that's what I think he is. His footwork really isn't there to call him like a route runner, but he is used on gadgety plays. Again, as a plus athlete, that's what they're going to do. Give him some end around, some reverses, whatever, see if he can make some money off that. But I think he can be a wide receiver 2, 3, the NFL level for a team. So I'm kind of excited about him.
Yeah. So look, I like Devontae Walker. I think he's the best wide receiver out of this group. I don't think that's a super hot take. You can tell me if it is. I think he's pretty easily the best wide receiver out of this group. He got a first round mock by Daniel Jeremiah last week, I think.
That's ludicrous. I'm going to say that. I think that's a little wild.
I think that's a little high. I had a second round prediction on him. I think that's middle second round probably. To me, if as a Cowboys fan, I'm like, can we draft this guy in the second round to replace Michael Gallup, and can we finally get rid of Michael Gallup? Because that's the kind of role I see. He's pretty much only downfield, right? He has that quick accelerate. I don't think he's actually as fast as people give him credit for. I think he just gets up to his max speed very quickly. So like point A to point B will be as fast as a lot of the fastest guys, but it's not because he's fast necessarily, but it's because his speed curve goes pretty accelerates very quickly and then just stays at a medium rate. I think he's medium fast. He just stays at a medium fast sprint speed for a long time is what I think. And so, I like his size too. I don't 6'1" seems short. I saw 6'2" height on tape.
Six
You know,
one point
whether
six, which I
okay,
verify.
I'll give him 6'2". I'll give him
Okay,
6'2".
all right.
The only things that other things that I noticed, he rotates a little bit funny. If you notice the way he cuts on it around his, like, rotating around his spine, if that makes sense. Most receivers, so hear me out. Most receivers will cut by rotating their hips, right? It's about hips, which rotate at a different angle than just your spine necessarily, if that makes sense. Maybe the PTs,
maybe the shoulders type of thing, like his shoulders kind of direct his body.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Nate Marquise can correct me on this. He's the PT, I think, right? But like I think he rotates more on his spine than his hips, like a normal person. So that's something I do want to ask around about. But I think he has good catch radius. So like even if he's not 6'2" or 6'3", whatever, I think his catch radius is the same as someone who's like 6'3". I'll give it to him. Like he does a good job there. I wish he would break more tackles, but that catch radius allows him to be that deep threat where he's fast enough. He accelerates fast enough and gets to the point fast enough that if you give him a jump ball down there, he'll get it. And so like, if that's all it takes, then yeah, Michael Gallup, right? I said he could replace Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup is the biggest YOLO receiver in the world, right? You just kind of truck it down there. He's down there somewhere and he'll do everything he can to get it. Devontae Walker isn't the aerial guy that someone like Michael Gallup is, but he is someone that has a good catch radius and gets downfield fast enough that it can be an effective downfield play. And like you mentioned, he has some like gadgety roles as well. I think, and part of this is the height, right? Like he looks taller than he is, maybe because he doesn't break out as cleanly as he should on intermediate routes. And so that might have something to do with it. I think he's a good receiver. I think he has a role as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type, like you said. And I think he'll stick, but I don't see him as like a super alpha type like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. He's not that type, right? Like he's not
going to excel like physically. He's not going to be a bully, like he does well at the catch point, but like during the routes, he's not a bully during his routes.
And I think the biggest point of that is right. Jamar Chase isn't a separation guy either, but he does most of his work in intermediate and short, which you call those plays more often. Devontae Walker is almost solely a deep ball guy, and those guys just aren't going to get as much play as these shorter and intermediate guys. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like I think he's good enough to be talked about with the alphas. He just doesn't get that kind of work.
Yeah, he won't be the first read on short intermediates. I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
We both agree second round pick, and I got my grades pulled up. I have him down as out of 10 as 6.79. Anyway, 7+ for me is first round grade, and then like 6.5+ is second round. So I have him smack down in the middle of the second round as far as grades go. So maybe a potentially top 50 guy, but I think we're locked in there together on what he's going to be.
Yeah, and that's close enough where like if a team reaches for him in the first round, you're like, okay, I get it. I don't agree, but I get it. Like, right? And I think that's where we're both at.
Yeah. And I think like, we haven't really been doing too many NFL fits, and like this is also, now I'm going to say it out loud, I feel a little stupid, but like the Chiefs need a deep ball guy. They can't keep running MVS out there, and they're using Rashee Rice as like the short intermediate guy, which I never saw that happening, how short they're using him, like using my manufactured touches. But I think Devontae Walker is going to be the deep ball guy that some team like that would want, not MVS. So,
I mean, I have Brian Thomas to the Chiefs at the end of round 1, but that's just me, I guess.
We'll talk about
moving
that.
on.
All right.
We'll talk about the slot only guy next. I love Ricky Pearsall. I really had to hold myself back from moving him up above Devontae Walker. Tell me why you don't like him.
No, I like him. I'm with you. I like him. I'm actually
okay.
As far as like the guys that can like do most to help their draft capital, that's obviously Devontae Walker's already being projected as a first round pick. But like as far as like guys that aren't already in that range, I think Ricky Pearsall is on that list. I think he's a phenomenal slot receiver. I think he's got some of the most solid hands I've seen come out of the slot too. Like very reliable, one-handed grab, survives contact all the time. He's very gritty as a runner and at the catch point too. I'm a big fan of him. I really am. I don't really know what he is besides the very most like reliable slot you can probably pick out of this class.
Yeah, I agree. I was floored by his catching ability. Like he just goes outside his frame. He has good. It's like I don't know if it's catch radius, but necessarily, but he just catches everything that's thrown at him. Like I don't actually have the numbers pulled up. I guess I could look at it, but his numbers were wild. Like Graham Mertz isn't the most accurate thrower, as you and I will
No.
probably agree.
Yeah.
But he was catching everything that was at him. Like it just wasn't close, right? Ricky Pearsall, 88 targets, 65 receptions. I don't know how that's calculated necessarily, so I'll leave that to you. But 963 yards in a team that didn't have any receiving options. Everyone, Austin was flaming people for drafting Trey Wilson in the first round,
I
or
love
early second
Eugene
round.
Wilson, by the way. We got a debate about that. We're still talking about the Slack. Not that he's the first round pick, but I think he's a second. Hey, whatever. We'll talk about different times.
But Trey Wilson gets Pearsall's role, right? Next year.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And that's that volume. And 963 yards from the slot, you will take every single day of the week, right? I was just floored by his catching ability. He was going up, he was going down. It was all over the place. I do think, go ahead.
Sorry, he got like sandwiched between, I think it was a G5 team, but like he got sandwiched between two DBs, survived contact just fine with a one-handed grab. I think it was Colorado State, but it was still a very impressive showing on how he just survived that.
Yeah, I saw, I don't even know who it was against. I mean, he just like slides on the ground like 3 yards and grabs the ball. I was floored. I do think he's probably slot only. I think he lacks the bulk and the strength. He is 6'1", so like he could play outside if he was stronger. And like at 188, 190, you'd figure like he might be strong enough, but I don't think he can play on the line. I think he gets kind of overwhelmed when like bigger physical corners try to press him, And so he doesn't have good contact balance though. He's not going to break tackles, but you're right. He does bounce off of people pretty easily. He's not like tackled necessarily, which I'll give you. And so, yeah, I mean, he was used like watching the number one for Florida go around the end and for a touchdown. That's Percy Harvin, right? That was the old Percy Harvin role. And like Pearsall's not that, he's not quite that electric, but he has that ability, right? He can take that end around. He has that gadget ability. I'm down with it. I liked Ricky Pearsall way more than I thought I would when I turned on that tape.
If he goes to the Senior Bowl and showcases good footwork, kind of you talked about like Mingo. Like Mingo's footwork was really good for his size. Didn't see that on his tape at all whatsoever. Certainly made himself money. But if Pearsall comes in here and shows off footwork like that, and we already seen the receiver play and all the other like kind of stuff that happens after the route, like I think he's a pretty good stud next level, like a very safe floor type player too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone's looking for that next guy, and people are gonna try to compare Jacob Cowing further down this list to Tank Dell from last year, but I think Pearsall is closer to that role, right? I mean, there's like 4 or 5 inches between them, but Pearsall is more that role, right? We can talk about it later, but Pearsall doesn't have that elite speed, but he does have that route running ability that Dell has, which has made him successful and we talked about him last year, so but we can move on here. Someone else that I was really surprised by was Javon Baker. Do you have an impression on Javon Baker before I go?
I needed to study his film because he was kind of a late announcement to coming out. I think he's just out athleting players at his level. I didn't really see a lot of. I wasn't impressed with his footwork. I wasn't impressed with his like deception. I thought he was just a speedster, and like with extended plays, capitalize off that. So I think he's more athlete than player, and I think some of those guys do come out to the Senior Bowl. I think some of them get like mid-day 3 draft capital, but I see the hype. I see your projected draft capital here too, and I'm not with it.
Every time I was like writing someone else up, I was like, nope, I think I like Javon Baker more, and I'd move him up one at a time. I think he started at the bottom of this slide, and I just slowly moved him up as I was watching people, and I was like, you know what? Actually, I think he's better. Like, and here's why, right? I thought he was shorter. I thought he was like 5'11", and when those dimensions came out, I was like, no way, he's really 6'2", 200. But I think that's the verified number, right? I think that's what was on the sheet.
6'1.5", 199.
Yeah. That's crazy. That seems way bigger than I thought. He has a little bit of that Dez Bryant feel to me. Not necessarily saying he's going to be Dez Bryant, but he has that like aggressiveness. He attacks routes. He doesn't just run routes. He attacks his routes with aggression. And so I really want to see, they're on the same team, so we're going to see it during practices. Javon Baker versus Kalen King. That's who I want to see. Right? Okay. Will you be convinced if he wrecks Kalen King out there?
Who destroyed Kalen King this year? It's escaping me.
Marvin Harrison. That's it.
Maybe.
Marvin Harrison Jr. was the only one that really ate up Kalen King. Other than that, he played a good season.
I am just very much not a fan of players transferring down. It's just such a symbolism of like they're just out athleting players. Like he came from Alabama and he actually was committed to Kentucky for a little bit, so a little salty about that, Javon Baker. But yeah, I don't know. I really think he's just a superior athlete. And like a player last year that was kind of like that was Trey Palmer to me. He's just out there out athleting players. And then we got to see his routes and Palmer's just running into dudes. And so I don't know. I'm gonna be looking.
To be fair,
to
Palmer made an impact in that wild card game.
He did.
By the way,
he's he's like a day 3 pick, but he's been kind of working out.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I think he's going to be much better than Trey Palmer. I think Trey Palmer was a little passive in his route running. Javon Baker, I think, attacks it more. He has that. It's hard to explain, but the way he runs is much more aggressive and very Des Bryant like. Go watch a clip of Javon Baker and go watch Des Bryant. I think you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
I agree with you. He's good speed, above average in the open field. He had the second highest ADOT in the group behind Tez Walker, by the way, which is wild to me. But yeah, I mean, he was running away from like Oklahoma and stuff too. So like, if Oklahoma doesn't have at least near the top 10 percentile athleticism on the defense, then I don't know, man.
Are they sending anybody from the defense to the draft?
I think they're all still young. I think is Billy Bowman finally graduating? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's Venables' defense, right? That Venables' defense usually performs pretty well. I mean, they weren't that good, but they were fine.
They weren't even ranked. I didn't have them ranked my top 25 to start off. They definitely outperformed what they were expected, but I didn't have much to say about Javon. You ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah, give me Malachi Corley, man.
Yeah, 5'11", 211 pounds, as advertised. Thank you, Malachi, for not lying on that. I love your note here, but I'm gonna read my notes here. G5, Yak King, manufactured touch type guy. I really good in the short intermediate area, but again, manufactured touches. I don't really think he's much of a route runner or footwork, knows how to separate. And let me just talk more about his Yak. He's a very violent upright runner, and it's kind of like he like swings his arm anytime someone tries to grab onto him, and these like little smaller like DBs in the G5 just can't handle that level of physicality. So that style of Yak, I don't think translates at the next level. He's not going to be able to out-violent the NFL corners like that. His ball skills too. He does like the Garrett Wilson jump for no reason, and to like get it into his like chest stomach to breadbasket carry that thing or catch it. So I didn't like that as much. He's a body catcher. That's what I'm trying to say. But he like goes out of his way to body catch it. So that was also my issue with him too. So another guy that I'm looking forward to see more footwork from him at the Senior Bowl here. But as far as his traits go, he's a gadget guy. I think I have him as like a 5th, 6th round grade. But yeah, that's Malachi Corley for me.
Yeah, I didn't know where to put Corley, to be honest. I'm not convinced on this 4th round pick. I'm happy to move him down, honestly. I just didn't know where the rest of these guys were coming in either. So I wrote on here, he's a better athlete than he is a football player, right? He was recruited as a running back, switched to wide receiver at Western Kentucky. At Western Kentucky? He was whatever. He was recruited as a running back, right? And it shows. He has no idea how to play the position. All he knows is, you ever played co-ed flag football?
Yes, I did, but I could never follow through on it. Yes. Anyway, yes. Unless you want a little story on it, but yeah.
Co-ed flag football, at least in church, church competitive co-ed flag football.
Oh, okay.
A lot of times we have that like one girl who played soccer, right? And so we tell them, come here, we're gonna just dump the ball off and you go score a touchdown. And they often do, right? And it's the best play in the book. It's just like we call it a slant, but it's really just okay, run, now come back. We're just gonna dump it off to you. That feels like what they do with Malachi Corley. He has like the 2nd lowest ADOT in the group or something. That's all they're doing. They're like, come here, we're just gonna dump the ball off to you. You go score a touchdown because you run over linebackers, right? Like that's what that feels like at 211. Like, how disappointed would you have been if you measured in like 5'9", right? Like, because then you might be like, let's actually switch him to running back. But like, he's a running back playing wide receiver out there, right? He only has average hands. He just needs to learn how to run routes. He needs to learn how to, do jump balls and time them correctly. Like, those are basic wide receiver things. And like, right now, he's just plus contact balance and is going to run people over. Like his ceiling right now in my brain is like 65% of Deebo Samuel, which is like,
okay. Yeah.
Okay. What do we do? I don't know. Like, I don't know, but he has to go to a system that will cater to him. And I don't know if if his draft capital will warrant that.
You're gonna know by the play caller what his role is gonna be in the NFL. It's gonna
Yeah.
be non-existent, or it's he's gonna be schemed in some stuff.
Right. Okay, we talked about Spencer Rattler earlier.
Dude,
Now we're
let's
talking
talk
about
the most caked up wide receiver coming out here. This dude's got cheeks for days. He can clap without his hands. I'm talking about Xavier Legette. 6 foot, 219 pounds. You split 6'1". Was he like? Is he 6.5? I'll check that
something
later.
like that. I rounded up the halves, so
5th year breakout. Let me tell you what, didn't do much for his first 4 years. I think there were some health issues there too. I probably should have dug a little bit deeper in that. But he really only was productive because of Juice Wells, and also Spencer Rattler really just locked onto him as a threat. He's a build-up speed runner, so I don't think his release is anything special. His routes certainly aren't special, but like once he builds up speed, he's not only a freight train with the ball in his hands, but also like if the play is still lasting long enough, he's also kind of hard to catch up too. So he's just an athlete here. Me and my co-host joke, we call him he's discount Treylon Burks, and people don't want the real thing anymore. So that's what I think he is as a player. I think he's going to lose money here because he's 1v1s. I don't think he's going to separate on. So, but he could have phenomenal ball skills, really reliable hands. But yeah,
I don't know. I struggled with Xavier Legette. I'm sitting here like he came out of nowhere. Is he just a product of Spencer Rattler just locking on? Like
yes, yeah, I think so, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk like it's funny because we talk about like, oh, he's the most caked up wide receiver. The least caked up wide receiver I've ever seen is also in this draft, not at the Senior Bowl though, in Troy Franklin, right? Yeah, that guy's the smallest butt I've ever seen in my life. But anyway, he did have great chemistry with Rattler, and so at least on the reps that Rattler's throwing to him, maybe he has a chance. Maybe, right?
Yes. Yeah. And the chemistry stuff does work too, because I was a big Puka Nacua fan last year, coming into the draft, coming to the Senior Bowl. But like, I'm not going to deny it to you. Me and Bar was talking about day one. Like when Jaren Hall was out there throwing the ball, like he was staring. Like his first read was Puka. He's just used to Puka, and Puka just took off. Every single 11v11, like he was like the first read, and it was like that's just because he was comfortable with. So that's a really good point. Legette could profit over when Spencer Rattler gets his reps and get that comfortability working with his QB from college there. So that's probably a good point there.
Yeah. Moving on to Felix's favorite receiver in this class. Felix Sharp, shout out to you. You want to go first on this?
I actually want to hear your opinion on him. Ladd McConkey, 5'11", 185 from Georgia. Had some health issues this year, so played a little bit sporadically, but has always flash some nice route running here. But Farmers, please, I want to hear your opinion on him. Really do.
Look, I am not going to say he's an amazing receiver, but I get why people like him, right? There are two main things that people will love about him. I wrote on here, he has an all gas, no brakes mentality. Not that he can't stop. He actually has very good start-stop ability, but his mentality is just like all effort, all go at all times. People will love that. That's number one. Number two is that he's a very detail-oriented receiver, right? I noticed he does many things well, right? He attacks space super intentionally, right? He sees the space, he attacks it because there's space there. Number two, he creates tensions for defensive backs. If he says, "Oh, I'm your coverage, but you also have to pay attention to this other thing," he's going to purposely make it hard for you to pay attention to the other thing, so making the defensive back choose. And by doing that, number three, he is forcing defenders to go outside their system in order to cover him, which is an interesting thing because I don't think he's pretty small. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's pretty quick, right? But he's not the fastest guy in the world, so he's not the biggest threat, but he's forcing people to go out of their zone, for example, in zone coverage. He's forcing people to stop covering their own zone to cover him, even though he's not the biggest threat, thereby making space for other people. So, we've been talking about some NFL fits here or there. Maybe it's just because they already have Hunter Renfrow, but he seems like a Raiders guy to me, right? Like he's, or maybe even the Patriots, right? It's one of those two to me,
We do need a slot guy. I do think the Raiders still have Jacoby Myers plus Hunter. Actually, I don't know about Hunter's status and I think his contract might be up. But I think he's an NFL starting slot here. I'm a little bit more You gave him a fourth, fifth grade. I actually gave him a late third, early fourth grade. So we're a little close, but I think he makes an NFL roster, sticks around. I think he has that skill set. I don't think he's that good of an athlete. Like I don't think he's going to test well, even if he does test, because it's kind of optional nowadays. But I do think his footwork is there, and I'm really excited about that. And people with good footwork, like they make money this Senior Bowl. It just costs one route, one Twitter post of a good route. Like it's all he needs.
Okay, let me ask you. So you think he's a starting NFL slot? Is his ceiling higher or lower than Cole Beasley?
Yeah, it's about the same.
About there? That's the ceiling, Cole Beasley?
That's accurate. And
Okay.
it's like floor is like Kyle Phillips. I know I'm
Okay.
kind of pinning on the certain race card there, but yeah, I think that's
I haven't watched Kyle Phillips, I'm gonna be honest with you. But okay, fair.
He-
I mean,
he
as a
could-
Cowboys fan, I saw plenty of Cole Beasley, right? And I know what the value that brings. Third and
Yeah.
5 is automatic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle Phillips, if you're gonna watch him, watch his like triangle stuff because that's kind of where he blew up. 5th round pick. I think he like started one game. Anyway, he was really good in the triangle.
Will do. That just add to my mountain of tape that I need to watch. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Moving on to the smallest guy in this class. Go ahead.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, you said he was gonna get the Tank Dell comparisons. I just want you to know that me and my co-host compare him to Greg Dortch, the Arizona wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, so little small guy. You got a Zippy Sutton. I agree with all that. I think he's a good separator too. Coming in as a 5th-year player, and just like this is narrative talk here. Like I thought he transitioned well last year. Like I know he only had like 2 blow-up games and was pretty mediocre rest year. But as far as like G5 to P5 stuff, like he looked comfortable and well adjusted. So I thought he did enough last year to get drafted. So to wait another year was very like interesting to me. The Senior Bowl invite is also really huge. He's a smaller guy here. I think he could be a special teamer at the next level and then offer some like deep type stuff here. But anyway, he's a small guy. He's going to hit off his routes. He's always been like number 2 of the P5 level. Like he doesn't outproduce Ted McMillan. Yeah, I don't have like a lot of stuff to say about him.
So yeah, I wrote a couple things down here. So someone recently compared Tank Dell to Xavier Worthy, which I don't think is a good comparison either. I just figured, people are going to see the other small guy at the Senior Bowl and say, you know what, Jacob Cowing, that's Tank Dell. Not at all. Tank Dell was regularly getting run down from behind because he's just not on the fast side of the spectrum. He's very much on the slow side. And so someone like Cowing, I think, is on the faster side. So I'm going to give a little bit of credit to him there. His catch percentage is not going to back this up, but he is the kind of guy that you kind of have to put the ball, on him or in front of him. He's not going to catch it if it's anywhere remotely behind him because one, he's running too fast for it to matter, and 2, his catch radius is too small that he can't. Even if he does, even if it's within reach, he's just not going to be able to get it because his arms are a little too short because he's 5'8". So, I think he's the guy that's going to get yardage. He's going to get yak. He's going to get separation. He's going to be some quarterback's best friend. In my opinion, I think he's closer to someone like Cole Beasley than maybe Ladd McConkey is. All right. Obviously missing one key trait there that we both know, but other than that, I think that looks a lot more like someone like Cole Beasley than and like slot only. Obviously, he's 157 pounds, probably in cleats and pads, but like I think he has like juice, but it will take a non-Shanahan / McDaniel style of offense to take advantage of it, right? Have to be more of a numbers Coryell type scheme, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't have any more thoughts on him. I'm looking at my grades right here. I have him as wide receiver 23 in the class, which makes him like a late day 3 type of guy for me. So I think you have him now as a 5th, but I think he's more in like the 6th, 7th range, probably 7th for me.
Yeah, just because he's so small, like I tend to agree with you. I was putting his film grade up there, and yeah, he's probably higher than I really meant to. I have a 5th on there, I guess. Which I guess takes us to Jamari Thrash, who's someone I guess I skipped technically on this list. I didn't really know where to put him, but I know you have less positive things to say about him than me, so go ahead.
He's 6'180". He's actually, I think he was South Alabama, might be Georgia State. I get those 2 schools mixed up sometimes in my head, but
Georgia
he's a
State
G5.
for sure. Yeah.
Georgia State.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that makes sense. Georgia State. Anyway, G5 to P5 guy was always an efficient runner as far as like analytics goes, like from the yards per route run. Goes over to be Jeff Brom's wide receivers. Jeff Brom has a very good track record. He's got Chuck Jones, Charlie Jones, also from last year's class. David Bell is a 3rd-round pick. Rondell Moore was a 2nd-round pick. Charles Jones, Chuck Sizzle was a 5th-round pick. And now we have Jamari Thrash on that spectrum of players here. There were reports he was dealing with injuries. I can't really confirm any of that type of stuff, but I thought he played really soft. I thought he might be one of the softer wide receivers I had to watch this year. Very easily hit off his routes. Didn't really win at the catch point when it came to contested stuff. Even like they played in a weathery game where it was pretty slippery, but like he looked pretty bad there too. Like couldn't just get his hands on the ball. So he's a very slender frame too, like 6'180". I thought was, well, that's what he measured it as, but I thought that's what he looked like too. I do think he was a decent route runner. Saw some manipulation, saw some decent footwork, some good separation skills there. I also just thought he lacked just raw athleticism too. So if he was a little bit more of an athlete, and then I could like hang my hat on the route running and be like, well, like he'll win like this, and I can forgive the drop rates that I think he's going to have in the NFL level. But I'm going to forgive that he's going to lose a physical battle when it comes to like yak stuff or even contested catch stuff and body adjustment type items. But yeah, so I don't see the NFL tools or NFL skill set here with Jamari Thrash.
Yeah. So I like Jamari Thrash a little bit more than you, but I'll agree with you that he is a little soft. I wrote on here he can only dish it, but he can't take it. Right. Like he'll kind of shove a corner at the stem, but then if the corner shoves him back, he's falling over. He's like he can't recover from that. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Which I think we're both in agreement. He's really lean. He looks like you can see the drop off from his shoulder pads into his gut, right? Like that's when the guy's really lean, right? Someone like Cody Schrader is like just one straight line from his shoulder pads all the way to his waist, right? But someone like Thrash is like, okay, you need to put on some weight. That rookie peanut butter is going to do wonders for him. I would love to see him. J.K. Crow earlier was asking whether Tez Walker was a fit for the Chargers since Quentin Johnston was a bust. I think someone like Jamari Thrash later in the draft might fit better for someone like Justin Herbert, who obviously has those vertical placement tools, but you want someone who can take advantage of his horizontal accuracy as well. And, they've been throwing him YOLO receivers this entire time, and Keenan Allen slowing down. So can Thrash be somewhat like a Keenan Allen type? Maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. I think he's a big reason why Louisville surprised a lot of people this year. And I think he varies his speed super well. He's not always running 100%. CD Lamb, for example, you watch him, he's always running his routes at like 75% until he gets the ball, and then he's off to the races, right? I think Thrash can vary it for somewhere between 65 and 90% at all times. Like you don't know how fast he's running on a given route, which I think is really interesting. It's interesting. He's really good at decelerating into a break and really good at accelerating out of a break, but the break itself is a little rough sometimes, which is kind of weird. But it might be more of a feature than a bug, right? He might be purposely delaying at the break so that when he accelerates, the defender's caught flat-footed. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. That's a possibility. But that being said, it takes a little bit long for him to get out of that break. And so, and he's also on the older side, but he's a G5 to P5 transfer. So I'll give him some grace on that.
Where would you put him on the spectrum of Jeff Brom wide receivers for the NFL? Like as far as draft capital goes, talking about like the three that's Thrash.
Okay. It'll go Rondell Moore, James Thrash, Chuck Sizzle, David I only run slats, Bill.
Okay. Yo, hey, you got some catches the last 2 weeks of the game. I'm just saying, David Bell, comeback tour.
Did you watch David Bell? Did you watch David Bell's Purdue tape?
Dude, yes, and I regret my analysis, so I don't really want to talk about it.
I think I maybe saw him run a route that wasn't a slant maybe 5 times over like 3 games. Like
I thought receiver
the dude only ran slants.
I thought receiver play plus I thought his routes were fine. I thought he ran good routes and then plus receiver play, but I knew he was a subpar athlete. And I just thought like maybe maybe he's good enough to be a reliable chain mover in the short area and intermediate. He certainly was not. So big whiff.
Yeah, fair enough. All right,
Big whiff.
quick hitters on the second page of receivers because we've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes and my voice is starting to go. So let's go.
Yes, Jaquan Jackson here. I gave him a lower grade than I really wanted to. Anyway, 5'8", 185. I think he was a running back wide receiver hybrid there for Tulane. He will have that chemistry with Michael Pratt coming out to the Senior Bowl here. I thought he was actually a really good athlete. His footwork was very impressive on film, even though his production profile is actually kind of garbage. His production profile is garbage, straight up. It's just garbage. He's got no production whatsoever. But like footwork, maybe really feel like this guy could be developed into a route runner. But I think at the minimum, he's a special teamer at the next level. Like I think he's I give like a couple guys special team grades. I think he's probably going to be the number one special team grade I have out there. So, which makes him late day 3, but like I think some upside. And there are some special teamers that do, like for me, that do develop into better players. I think KJ Osborne, for example, was a special teamer coming out, 5th round pick for the Vikings, and he's like a reliable wide receiver 3 for them now. Not that they're a skill set comparison, but more of a like situational narrative type situation for me. But
Yeah,
anyway,
Slater was a similar type too, right?
he never got productive though. He was just like special teamer and became our team captain for like 15 years.
Oh, who am I thinking of? Who's the guy in the Giants?
Oh, Gunnar Alinsky, maybe. It's kind of
no. Well, not him, but there's a receiver that like for some reason people are considering like a really good receiver or their best receiver, I guess.
Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin.
Well, he's on the Steelers, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a Steeler, and he was like to me a special teamer, but people thought it was going to be a really hot slot name. Drafted in the 4th round.
Yeah, one of my first write-ups ever for Campus Canton was about Calvin Austin. He's a fellow political science major, so you know. Shout out to the political science department. Okay. Jaquan Jackson, like you mentioned, almost no production. Was he out of eligibility? Why didn't he even come out? I'm not really sure. I'm not. Yeah.
I assume he got a Shrine Bowl invite. He was one of the ones that was poached from them, but got that invite early, and I thought he probably just would take the bag and run. Like that was probably his best shot at making money out of it. So.
Yeah, I don't know. ADOT suggests he could be a deep crosser type, like a faster slot type, but like a lot of his plays were like deeper, like long plays. So obviously he has some open field ability. I don't know though. I look forward to see what Michael Pratt can do with him, because even Michael Pratt didn't throw to him that often. So do they even have chemistry? I don't even know, you know? Maybe some of that. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought last year, like to me, like some of the worst performances. I thought Darius Davis was on that spectrum. Left the week early, and then he got drafted in the 4th round to the Chargers. I think that could be Jaquan Jackson. Like honest to God, like I think he's got really good footwork. I don't know about the receiver play, but like really fast footwork, and if he shows that anyway, I think that's probably his best case scenario.
You know, I had forgotten that Darius Davis had gotten drafted so high because even at TCU, he wasn't very good. So
it's just that was wild to me. I don't know. The Chargers need to fire their wide receiver scouting department. They need to fire them.
Hey, that wide receivers coach used to be at Maryland, so watch your mouth.
Heading on over to Roman Wilson, or you got more to talk about with Jaquan?
No, let's go. Roman Wilson, I have almost nothing to say about him. He's just your typical, super athletic Michigan wide receiver that comes out, but we have no idea who he is because they don't pass the ball over in Michigan.
Yeah, 5'11", 187. I think he is a body catcher. I really do think that.
Okay.
That's my big issue with him. Me and Corey, also co-host of the Back to Debbie, we comp on the Mecole Hardman. That's not positive at this point in time. He did get drafted in the 2nd round, but he's got legit speed. He's going to be a combine hero type of guy. He's going to make a lot of money there as long as he has an okay Senior Bowl day. But I do think he's a bit of a body catcher. I don't think the routes are anything special. 4th year kind of breakout guy. Had a really good freshman year, disappeared for 2 years. And then 4th year, he was like the safety blanket for the one throw they let JJ McCarthy throw each week.
Who was the Michigan guy that was at the Senior Bowl last year?
Ronnie Bell.
Okay. Better or worse than Ronnie Bell?
Better than Ronnie Bell.
Significantly better than Ronnie Bell?
If I had to rank the bottom 3 performances of the Senior Bowl, Ronnie Bell is in that list, hands down. I thought he was pretty bad.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know enough because there's not enough tape out there, because at the end of the day, It's just another uber athletic Michigan receiver that we have no idea who they are because they didn't catch the ball enough. So
Fourth round
that's
grade
all I
for
have.
me, and I'm going to admit that's going to be because of his combine, and then he's not bad. I don't think he's great, but he's not bad.
Okay, sure. I project him as a fifth rounder here. I'm not super married to that idea. That's fine. Like,
I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the next wide receiver here. Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice, 6'2", 210 pounds here. Started his career out of Colorado. Actually had like 2 kick returns for a touchdown, I think, as a true freshman. So it was kind of a little exciting with that. Had some legit speed for his size. Goes to like USC and was just a guy. Like he just existed, but he like really took off in that Tulane bowl game, which they lost to. But he looked amazing in that game. Like good footwork, good ball play. Kept his feet under him, which was like something that he never really did. He was more of a strider, but kind of did a lot more short, choppier steps, which really helped out his mobility. He was a totally different player during that game. And then I think this past year was more of the same. And so I think that Tulane performance was a little bit of an outlier here. So I do want to hear your opinions about Brendan Rice. I think we're kind of locked in step on opinion, though, judging by the projected draft capital.
yeah, obviously you can't get better bloodlines than Brendan Rice, right? It's just physically not possible. To be fair, he's a much different.
Randy Moss's
Sorry,
son.
who?
Randy Moss's son?
Oh, Thaddeus Moss?
Yeah.
Undrafted tight end out of LSU that signed with Washington for a brief moment before being out of the league, I think.
Absolutely correct.
I think Brendan Rice was misused by Lincoln Riley, right?
Okay.
I think he's more of an aerial specialist here. And that's not how Lincoln Riley was using him. He was trying to get him out in space and get yards that way. And I just don't think that's his game. And nothing is more clear to me, like nothing supports that more to me than the fact that you notice he drags his toes whenever he makes sharp cuts.
Yes, I did. That Tulane game was just, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You know who else does that a lot in this class? Mitchell. I will not have AD Mitchell ranked very high because to me, those toe dragging means that they have weak hips, that they can't push off of it correctly, and therefore lack some lateral ability there. Brendan Rice drags his toes all over the place as well. I think he needs to just be a downfield jump ball guy. I think he's, like his ceiling might be what our mean expectation for Tez Walker is. Like, no disrespect to him, I just don't think that that's his game. And like in the NFL, how many of those guys can you keep on the roster? I'm not really sure.
No, yeah, we talk about roles and skill sets a lot over at my podcast here, and jump ball and field stretching are like the two most really replaceable skill sets there. So it's necessary 100% for every offense to have their guys. Once that first contract is up, and even if you are successful at one of those two things, there's really not a reason to pay you unless you're exceptional. But like for the most part, not a reason to pay you and keep you on the bill for that.
That and running backs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to FCS star Ryan Flournoy. You have thoughts on him?
I watched a little bit. I highlight clips, so let's not say I went to a full dive in. But not a separator at the FCS level. Although he is a 95th percentile athlete, you go to our athletic comparison tool on the Campus to Canton website, he is among the top athletes that you'll ever find out there. He was very productive for SEMO, who also had a receiver go to the Patriots. Christian Wilkerson went to the Patriots UDFA 3-4 years ago. Anyway, so that was kind of funny. Shout out to the Patriots again, taking FCS guys. He's just really athletic with good ball skills, which was my same analysis for Andre Yoshivas or Yoshiva. I'm not even sure how to say his name anymore.
Yoshivas, yeah.
Yoshivas, yeah. Coming out to the Shrine Bowl, and then he really disappointed by just not adjusting competition. So another guy I'm very excited about, obviously, raw athleticism. So I'm excited to see how he plays against these SEC, these early day 2, day 3 picks that are he's gonna be playing against on the DB side. So.
Yeah, I got similar vibes, right? So he didn't have the weigh in, but he's listed at 6'2", 197, which probably means he's 6'007 and 200. That's probably where I'd put him.
He looked well built to me. I don't think it's ridiculous. He looked well built to me.
Sure. I don't think he's 6'2" necessarily, but he's around there. He's in the ballpark. Like, I'm not gonna give him like 5'11". I think it's like 6'1" ish, give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote down physical, big body, contested catch receiver in our C2C athletic percentile or athletic comparison tool. He was 95th percentile speed specifically. I don't know how we got that number, but that's impressive, right? Considering I don't think we saw too much speed from him. His quarterback was garbage, with all due respect, in that he wasn't remotely accurate anytime at any point. And Flournoy was having to adjust to those balls constantly. And so, at the end of the day, he's not a really separation guy, but he's really good at adjusting the ball in the air. Which, not to say he's an aerial guy, but that he's a good adjustment guy and he plays well through contact as the ball's coming down, which, is a pretty distinct distinction from like Brendan Rice, who I think is an aerial guy, right? But I think he'll actually do well because unlike Xavier Legette, who we talked about might struggle with like not being able to just out physical these guys, Flournoy is not the type that initiates the contact, but he plays well when contact is initiated with him, which I think will play at the Senior Bowl, to be fair.
I like that. I do like that a lot. Sorry, I'm looking at your grade, dude. 5th round grade. Is that just tentative just for now to get eyes on?
Yeah, so I actually found tape somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but I saw tape somewhere. It was still a YouTube cutout, so I don't know if it was like super high integrity or whatever, but I did see like every passing play by Southeastern Missouri somewhere. And from that I found that like he's just he plays well through contact. That's really all it is.
Okay.
He's big bodied. I think he'll play better at the Senior Bowl than someone like Andre Yoshvas did.
NFL build, good receiver play. Sounds like not soft. Good athlete, good raw athlete.
Yeah.
So we'll see more. But
who's not a great athlete? Oh, sorry. Go
Johnny
ahead.
Wilson. Johnny Wilson. Yeah. 6'6", 237 pounds. Should have converted to tight end a little bit earlier. Barnabas got a little nugget here saying that he's set to work out with the tight ends at Mobile. Same thing as last year with Elijah Higgins over there to play with the tight ends. I think the second half of the week. Sometimes with these guys, we have to make the statements like, oh, he's a good mover for his size. You know how like when the combine comes out and they do the size adjusted speed scores and all that stuff like that. But we have to put the acronym, like the additional add-on of for his size. But if you take that away and you're like, all right, good athlete. Like, no, he's not. Not on the NFL scale. He's not. I think he's a body catcher too for a guy for how big his wingspan is. So that was a little bit weird to see too. He does like turn and get upfield. Just again, like for his size, love his athleticism. For the NFL, I do not love his athleticism. So yeah. Anyway, I also see your note here, dude. Huge catch radius really does not take advantage of his length. Or really, do you disagree with the body catching thing in his arms?
I think he can reach any ball, but does he actually catch those balls? Not really. Like I guess that's what I was saying. No. So I'm talking, it's different scenario, right? If the ball is out of his frame, he can reach it. I don't think he's going to catch it necessarily, but he can reach it.
Okay.
He's just like, and I don't think he does a good enough job of like boxing out, right? Like he's probably the tallest person, maybe bar none, at the Senior Bowl. Maybe. I can't remember if Kingsley Sumataya actually.
Brevin Stanford might be the only one that's the same height as him. Right.
Like I can't remember if Kingsley Sumataya actually weighed in at 6'7" or not. But that being said, I've had this debate with someone on Twitter before. I don't think he's a good tight end either because he can't block to save his life. No. And there's no real route running to speak of. He's only good athleticism, even if you put him with tight ends. And that's under the assumption that you're giving him wide receiver standards at the tight end position. If you plug in his dimensions at the tight end position, he's like 20th percentile athletic score. Like it's not good. And that's not to say he's not big, right? He is tall, but you can't weigh that little and be that tall, right? Like it has to meet somewhere in the middle, I think. And so anyway, I think, if you compare his athleticism to wide receivers, it's poor. If you compare his athleticism to tight ends, it's good, but not great. And you can't compare him to smaller guys like Sam Laporta or Michael Meyer, who are much bigger, much better blockers, and frankly, more athletic than even Johnny Wilson is. And so I am not bullish on his outlook, but I think that he was so successful at Florida State, just like the team was successful and he was a big part of that, that I think he will get some hype just off of that.
I think 24/7 Sports nailed his comp coming out of high school. That would be my comp going to the NFL as well, and that's going to be Colin Johnson, the 5th-round pick from the Jaguars. I think he's a little bit less of an athlete than Colin Johnson, who was a 5th-round pick.
Was he drafted? That was a long time ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, he was a 5th-round pick. He had like one big game, but yeah, that was about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think he's also heavier than Colin Johnson.
He is 17 pounds heavier.
Yeah. Colin Johnson at least was like movable. I just don't see Johnny Wilson moving very well is my problem.
No, either he learns to do end zone fades or he fades himself.
So yeah, that's fair. That's a good way to put that.
Let's go over to another bloodline.
Yeah, this time we're going brother, I guess. Or their dad was a coach somewhere as well, right? We're talking about Luke McCaffrey, CMC's brother. Long, lanky, super productive at the G5 level, CFF darling. I think he's just a little bit too tall, a little too stiff-hipped to be a true route runner, but he has good linear speed, and he adjusted to a lot of inaccurate balls, and so I think he's going to make it into a camp somewhere. I think someone might take a flyer. Maybe the 49ers are just like, hey, CMC, we got your brother. That might be something that comes down to the line. But converted quarterback, so he has the IQ, but I don't know how effective he is as a wide receiver necessarily.
No, and then just because I'm doing player comps right now, Dax Milne-esque from BYU, a little bit better athlete.
I think Dax is a lot better player.
Dax Milne was a 6th-round pick for everybody listening, so.
Yeah, Zach Wilson's roommate.
Yes, and
took
his girlfriend. Can't forget about that.
I don't know about all that. I don't pay attention to that kind of drama. Speaking of drama, let's talk about a guy who's been involved in a lot of drama at Texas A&M.
Yeah, I actually do think this guy has the chance to make the most money out of anyone in this group here. Anaya Smith, 5'9", 197. Verified sizes there. Nice stout build, lower half. Pretty good yak there. Running back converted to wide receiver as well for Texas A&M here. Was never the wide receiver one truly for his team, which was kind of a shame because I really want to see him kind of take that step up. He's a very electric runner in the open field, and he also does that exaggerated jab step. You know what I'm talking about? He just kind of jabs his foot out the way running backs do. So he's a little bit
jab it, and then you throw your body the other direction, right?
Yeah, dude, that's Anaya Smith all day when he's in the open field with the ball. But which is nice because he makes guys miss in the open field. He certainly does maximize open space, and I really do like that about him. So, and I think he's a pretty good athlete as well too. I don't think he's a negative in the athletics department. So I think he could be a gadgety short area slot guy, but I think he could rotate in with a he can be a rotational piece. Maybe not wide receiver 2, 3, but I think he's a rotational piece next level. So I do not agree with your projected draft capital, but I think he's got some upside.
Sorry, where did you say you think his draft capital is?
I think I have him graded early day 3 to mid day 3. Let me see.
Is that accounting for his troubles off the field or no?
No, I'm assuming those days are behind him. It's been over a year. The NFL interviews, which we'll never know, are going to be, I think, very pivotal for Anaya Smith. I think one, having a strong Senior Bowl performance, which I think he can do. I think he can possibly do that. And then step 2 is to nail the interviews. That's his 2 things he's got to do this all season.
I think his off the field issues will be a bigger red flag than I think you're considering, as well as the fact that
does he have Baker Mayfield's agent? Does he?
I don't know.
Or not Baker? Excuse me, Johnny Manziel. If you got Johnny Manziel's agent, I believe in him.
I don't know. Josh Allen's agent was also probably a good one, considering he got some racist tweets that came up on draft day, and he still went number 1 overall. But
he was a mid day 1 guy. I think he's a 15th overall pick.
Who was?
Josh Allen.
No, Josh Allen, the quarterback.
Yeah, Josh Allen, the quarterback, was not the 101. I'm pretty positive about this. I think
maybe I'm
took
wrong.
them to the playoffs, even though they had a horrible points for to points against record, but they still won enough games to make it to the playoffs.
Fitzpatrick?
And that wasn't Fitz. It was one of the journeyman running quarterbacks.
Case Keenum?
Is it Teddy? Is it Teddy?
I don't know. Okay. Well, let me. So Anaya Smith, he stuck it out with Jimbo for so long. I think that's impressive in itself, right?
The money.
But yeah, I agree with you. He has some juice, but that off the field stuff, I think, is just going to hold him back, and that's why I have him as low as I do. I would not be
Did
surprised
you
if
want to
he's
go over the
UDFA.
off the field stuff, or do you want to keep alluding to it? Or
I just want to keep alluding to it. There's no reason to make that
okay,
so public, but he has been arrested is all we need to say. And I think that's a big enough red flag that I think you know, teams were so scared about Laramie Tunsil that they let him slide to the 20s, right? Like, and that was just one quick video on Twitter. Like, I think this is a lot bigger, and I think that'll for a guy that already on film is probably a day 3 guy. I just don't see teams willing to take um that risk.
the same
Um,
energy I had for Spencer Rattler, pretty much, but with a little bit better reasons to mine.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
All right.
Wrapping up the wide receiver position really quickly. Jordan Whittington, he's not like his brother. He's a little bit bigger and less, and he's a wide receiver. His brother is a running back. But 6'1", 204 wide receiver from Texas. I struggled to stay healthy throughout his career, but big physical guy. I have Noah Brown listed on here as his comp because he'll just be a run blocking wide receiver out there. And Noah Brown has had a little bit of flashes of catches here and there, but he's really just a run blocker out there.
Kind of crazy his little breakout here at the Texans this year, but yeah, I think Jordan Whittington's the best blocking wide receiver in this draft. Maybe to the Jets replace Corey Davis there if they really want to, but he did start out as a running back recruit coming out. He was like an athlete. I think he did both positions in high school. Really could have gone either way, but then chose to go wide receiver.
Fair enough. Is his brother a better prospect in the draft whenever he decides to come out?
No, is Noah Whittington his brother? I actually didn't know that. Is that Noah Whittington?
That was my impression. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong? I might be wrong.
Yeah, I had no idea. So I'll look into it later. But.
Okay. And then finally, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, 6'1", 200-pound receiver from Georgia. He was never really asked to do anything. I don't think he's anything special, really, but he has good.
About it.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
Good ball skills. If you throw him the ball, he'll catch it. I think that's all you can ask for a receiver. So we'll take it, but I don't see him really getting drafted out here.
No, I don't. Maybe people like the G on the side of his helmet. But besides that, I'm with your very first bullet point on here that says nothing special.
Yeah, I mean, he'll catch the ball if you throw it to him. That's about as all you can ask. And so, he got that yardage. He got a good number of touchdowns from Georgia, but Georgia, number 1, wasn't throwing it around that much. Number 2, I don't know how much of that is him and or the talent around him. And 3, there was nothing on tape to suggest he was a plus route runner, a plus
absolutely
anything.
Not.
I think he has some aerial potential. He could be like an aerial guy, but that would take some development as well.
Rather Brennan Rice in that department than him.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Duh. Okay. Moving on to tight ends.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I think you have very different rankings than I do on tight ends.
Yes.
Okay,
Ben Sanato is my tight end 3 in the class and my tight end 1 coming out here to this thing. I think he has some really good versatility, some very good pass catching skills. Everybody hates the number 34 on his chest. I think he's a very average athlete, but I think as far as pass catchers go, I actually like what he does. I don't really have much else here to really say about that. His blocking, I also don't have much of an opinion on either. Sorry, I just think it's average, but as far as receiver play goes for tight end, I think he's very good at it.
I think he's fine. So the first 2 guys on this list, we'll talk about Shaheem Bell as well, but I think they're kind of these guys that are good athletes with no role on the offense, really. Bensonot was listed as a slash fullback for the longest time in the Kansas State offense, right? And he's big, right? He's 6'4", 245. So that's tight end size, right? That's normal tight end size. But he was just lined up all over the place, did everything for Colin Klein down there in Manhattan. I believe it's Manhattan, right? Yeah, Manhattan, Kansas. Right. Yeah. He's not a very good athlete. That's just not his game. He has pretty bad change of direction. It was even worse. They had a snow game. That's where this picture on the slide is from. They had a snow game. He couldn't stop. He just couldn't stop. He was just running in straight lines because when he tried to stop, he was just sliding out. Just not great change of direction. That's immediately noticeable on tape. I will say it always takes about 3 or 4 guys to tackle him. So you get him that ball and he's running upfield. It's tough. He's a real bear to bring down. He has good speed, decent speed. I wouldn't say he's like a deep threat or like a vertical seam threat necessarily, but you get him that ball, he's going to run. He's a good blocker as well, being listed as a former fullback. Another former fullback, quote unquote, is Jaheim Bell, 6'2", 229. Let's call him athlete out of Florida State. He really played tight end, receiver, running back, maybe some fullback between South Carolina and Florida State. Both they used him in all kinds of ways. I think I labeled him as an athlete without a home. But what do you think about Jaheim Bell?
I think he's a move tight end. I think move tight ends have been, by the fantasy community specifically, has been overrated as far as what they do in the NFL level. I think Jaheim Bell would be lucky if his career path mirrors that of like Jonnu Smith, who I think is probably the best move tight end out there. But
Evan Ingram?
I think Evan Ingram is actually a good receiver. I don't think Jaheim Bell can play receiver. I really don't.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have anything positive to say about Jaheim Bell. So you're like a little great here. Second, third round is pretty surprising to me. So I don't think he's.
Oh, okay. You don't think he's athletic enough to just be a all around weapon?
No, not at all. No, I think.
Okay.
I think he's less of an athlete. No, that's not right. I think he's very average, and then I don't think he's a plus as far as a receiver goes, which makes me just care a little bit less about him. And I don't think he's like, as far as like gadget guys go, like want to get like a little cute with your tight ends or make them screens. And Evan Ingram stuff was all manufactured touches this year. Like it was all like he got like 3 screens a game. It felt like. I don't think Jaheim Bell
always has been. Yeah.
I don't think Jaheim Bell is a good enough athlete to even capitalize on screen plays like that. So, like they would rather have better options. I think any NFL team would have better athletic options to give screen plays to.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So, as a Maryland alum, right? To me, he looks like a more athletic Chig Okonkwo, who actually kind of popped at the end of 2022 and then didn't really do much in 2023. But I think there's some sort of role for him there. I don't know. I think he could have better contact balance, and when he's met with like real defenders, like NFL level defenders, I think he does get a little bit overwhelmed as a blocker. But that being said, I think he's athletic enough that some offensive coordinator will want him, whether or not they use him correctly or not. I mean, look at like someone like Jeremy Ruckert, right? He got drafted in the second round, and the Jets haven't used him basically at all, right? And so I think that kind of draft capital exists, and I think I expect Jaheim Bell to fall into that category.
There was a lot of surprise tight ends drafted last year. There was a Penn State guy that was drafted late in the second. Brennan Strange, that was weird. That was a strange pick. So
yeah.
Yeah, I just don't like move tight ends. In general, I think they're very overrated. Jonnu Smith was really nice and hot for 1 year, but that was about it.
Jonnu Smith is what school to do? Is he this? No, Gerald Everett is a South Alabama guy.
I don't know where Jonnu came from, but I knew he got like popular at Atlanta, went to the Patriots, who overpaid him and never utilized him, even how he was supposed to be used. Just use him as an extra blocker, and then he went back to Atlanta and had some nice games this year. Also with Jaheim Bell, though, very funny. He was selling merch like halftime of a game, started tweeting out his merchandise from his private, his NIL deal or whatever. And then again, end of the year, he was putting out his merchandise for South Carolina and was like, yeah, let's run it back. And then like 2 days later hit the portal and just switched his merchandise to Florida State. It's so funny.
I will never rag on someone for going after the bag, but by the way, Jonnu Smith was FIU. But yeah, okay. Moving on to who I think is the most complete tight end in this group.
Okay.
Theo Johnson, right? I don't think his production profile was anything special necessarily. Yeah, to be fair, I blame the system more than anything. We were so high in Drew Eller for so long, and we saw him and we're like, oh, maybe not. And I think that's has more to the system than even him. And so I don't think Theo Johnson got a fair shake either. But I would argue best size to athleticism combination. I think of all the big boys out here, I think he moves the best. And combined with that, I think he's also one of the better blockers in this group, maybe other than Brevin Spanford, maybe second best, maybe third best if you want to argue, or AJ Barner. I could have that conversation. But, plus blocker. He's just not super sudden. That's the only problem. And I think, you know, here's the thing, right? Like Benton Strange got drafted way too high last year. The Cowboys drafted Luke Schoonmaker way too high last year.
Yeah.
The NFL loves Big Ten tight ends, and I've always said Big Ten tight ends get ready a little bit faster than any other conference, and it's true, right? Like you look at who was that Alabama tight end that just transferred? Black,
Amari Niblack going over to Texas.
Niblack, yeah, right. Is he going to be able to play in the NFL right away? Not chance, right? He's too thin, right? But you get guys like Chigakonkwo, you get guys like Jake Ferguson, you get guys like also a Cowboy, Peyton Hendershot, or you get all these Iowa guys like Sam Laporta. The NFL loves Big Ten tight ends, and I think Theo Johnson's just the next in that line.
Yeah, I think you nailed it here. He didn't get his like fair shake, which was very surprised to see him come out this year because Penn State brings in Kotelnicki from Kansas, who runs a very specific scheme, and I think Franklin's one of the most unimaginative play callers out there in the NFL landscape. So I was pretty excited that I think he probably recognized that, went out to go get help, and found the appropriate amount of help. So, which kind of like revitalized almost every single draft stock that Penn State has left over on the athletic side of the ball, or on the offensive side of the ball, excuse me. But yeah, I think he said a great, phenomenal pass blocker. He has a lot of the athleticism, like the whole like tools argument that we say for other positions. That's Theo Johnson, and it wasn't even like his fault for his production profile. It was very clearly a coaching scheme. Coaching scheme was to blame for it. So, even though
maybe he just felt maybe he just heard the footsteps from Andrew Rappleyea. But sorry, continue.
Oh, okay, a Rappleyea fan. Okay. Yeah, Ben Sinnot's my favorite in this group, but as far as like the biggest mystery that I really want to focus on when I'm there, it's actually Theo Johnson.
Fair enough. Noting here, I mentioned earlier, Tanner McLaughlin is no longer participating in the Senior Bowl due to a training injury. So Arizona tight end Tanner McLaughlin not going to be at the Senior Bowl. Kind of wish he was coming at least to interview, but I don't know if he'll even be there for that. So just that note. Quickly going through the last three, because we've been talking for 2 hours and 16 minutes now, and we do have 12 viewers, so glad you guys are here. But let's talk about these tight ends really quick.
Yeah, Jared Wiley here, TCU, 6 foot 259. Yeah, he does have a lean build. Especially for a guy his size, he's 259 pounds. Anyway, I was pretty excited about him. He played really well at Duggar last year, and I can't say he built onto that. But as far as like tight end production goes, didn't really fall off here. Another guy that I'm looking forward to and watching. I wasn't really too excited, but the more I looked at this like tight end class, I think my like tight end 5, 6 are up in the air in the class. So I'm also pretty excited to watch him. He's like him, Ben Sinnott, Theo Johnson, my 3 most excited guys to see at the Senior Bowl this year.
Yeah, so Jared Wiley was a weird one for me. I don't think he has much blocking in him. I think he's really just a receiving tight end, which is okay. I think there's a role for that in the NFL. And like I mentioned, he's very lean, right? Like it's weird. He's very top heavy, but it's not like in his gut or anything, right? It's like all in his shoulders and his chest. It's like it's kind of a weird build in my mind. And so I think there's some strength that's missing, even though he's a thick upper half. I wish he had a better lower half, but he has good catch radius. He was even better with even less. I don't know. I guess it was a downgrade in quarterback play in 2023, but in 2022, he had a really great season with Max Duggan. And so, okay, a 2018 Elite 11 finalist, if you will, Max Duggan. So yeah, I compared him to kind of to like a Robert Tonyan style, maybe, kind of a thicker, just wide receiver type. I do think he's a very good catcher. Like he has good hands. His catch radius is big because he's so tall. And he's, I just wish he was like harder to bring down. And I wish he was a little bit better coming out of breaks. I do. He's just a little bit tall, so his hips don't sink very much. And I don't know if that's just because the weight is so distributed toward the upper half that if he sinks it anymore, he's just going to lose balance or something. But in terms of fantasy, he might have better upside than the other 3 people in front of him, And so I think it's very possible Jared Wiley is one of the more productive tight ends in fantasy this year among rookies. So there's potential there. I don't know how to gauge this just like big hole in his skill set,
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Hoover took over for TCU. I want to say it was week 5. I know it was early on in conference play here. I think Josh Hoover's a nice gunslinger. He's young and made a lot of mistakes. Ball placement really wasn't like the best. But as far as like, first year starting, half a year starting, I'm actually pretty excited about his trajectory. Hopefully he can turn into like a Jackson Dart on the college level. But anyway, I want to focus more on his last 4 weeks here as far as like production goes, because new quarterback doesn't really have any chemistry built, play with a lot of second team guys, but some seem to like find Wiley here like the last like 4 weeks, 7 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets, and then 10 targets, was very productive down the stretch. And like that's really kind of like the sample size that I'm focusing on when I'm trying to watch him. Because like again, it was kind of more of a transition year for them. It was just a transition year. So I'm more like focusing on that type of stuff during his skill set.
Yeah,
That's all I
absolutely.
got. Yeah, that's all I got for Jared Wiley.
I mean, yeah. So we got 2 Big Ten tight ends to wrap this up here. I see we have some pretty strong opinions about Brevin Spanford, but first let's talk about AJ Barner, former Indiana tight end, transferred to Michigan. Did you get to watch any of Michigan's offense this year?
I did watch plenty of Michigan offense this year. I think it's a great blocker. I think he can block his butt off, and I can't wait to see him on the edge blocking guys. I think he's a blocking tight end to me.
Which is funny, right? I don't know if you saw any of his Indiana tape. He was not a blocker at Indiana. He was basically the only pass catcher other than Cam Camper on that team.
Oh, was that when Cam Camper tore his ACL, like midway through or towards the end?
Something like that. It was a crazy season. No, I think this was the year that Cam Camper. I think that was the year Cam Camper had the ridiculous like year where he had like 100 some catches or something.
He was like leading the league in targets, and then he like got hurt. Yeah. And he's with Boise now, by the way. He's with Boise, so maybe he gets some.
Yeah, maybe some Cam Camper love for next year. But AJ Barner was a receiving tight end. He wasn't really a blocking tight end when he was at Indiana, and suddenly he comes to Michigan, and we expect, oh, his draft stock's going to go up, and he does nothing but block all game. Which, to be fair, there are only 5 throws a game, so one to Roman Wilson, one to Blake Corum, one to Donovan Edwards, one you can count out the targets, and AJ Barner isn't on that list. So okay, fine. I think he's unremarkable but solid Big Ten tight end. Like I said, the league loves Big Ten tight ends. And so I think he's a good blocker now, but he's only been asked to do it for a year, and he's had, a former Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, with him. So I think he has a lot of potential. Is he as good as like Schoonmaker? No, for sure not. I think he might be a better pass catcher than Schoonmaker right now than Schoonmaker was last year at this point. But I think that, he's when he's at his best as a receiver, it's when he's just like, those dogs that's whose only job is to sniff out truffles. AJ Barner is just sniffing out soft spots in the zone, and that's where he's at his best as a receiver. So, it's late, man. Yeah, we can wrap this up here. Do you have any Brevin Spanford thoughts? I know we see some in the comments, but
no, I know Minnesota fans think everybody that they have is going to be like an all-star. No, he's 6'7", 270. I'm not impressed with him as a mover either. Kind of how we talked about Johnny Wilson. I would definitely view him the same way. Like he's just not, I think, a dynamic mover. He struggles in contested catch target area stuff, and I don't really understand why. He's big, like just use your body. So I think he's like his receiver play too is a little bit not appealing to me, especially for a guy that just finished up his 6th year in college. So I think hands is an issue, although sometimes I might give him benefit of the doubt because I think Kaliakmanis was actually terrible. I don't think who's the quarterback before him? Tanner something? It wasn't Tanner Morgan because that's the defensive tackle from Arizona. But Tanner.
No, that's Jordan Morgan. It was Tanner Morgan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Tanner Morgan also wasn't a good quarterback either. Although that was like the best quarterback they've had in like 2 decades, which is very depressing to say out loud and think about.
Yeah.
I don't know I have no idea what this guy's role is at the NFL level. I don't think. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I put down true blocking tight end. Like he really is the best blocker out of the bunch, I think, probably. I just don't think he moves that well in space. He's just too big, and he takes forever to get in and out of a break. Oh my goodness. It just takes so long that like Yeah, Kalik would just put the ball on him because his frame is so big, and he would catch it. And I think all things considered, it's not bad hands. Like he has pretty decent hands. He goes down so easy for his size. For a guy who's 6'7", 270, you would expect a little more resistance to going down, but all it takes is someone to cut him down, and he's down. He is down. But that's not what he's blocking. When he's blocking, he's basically a brick house out there. He's a townhouse, And so I'd like to see some pass catching ability. But like you said, he's old. Like he's spent so much time in college. Is a team willing to invest that much time in a guy who's that age to a good receiver? That's questionable in my opinion. But I could be convinced that he could be drafted depending on how he does in Mobile. But as of right now, his tape, I think, is just someone that probably isn't going to get drafted, but will be on a roster in sort of a Mercedes Lewis role, right? The NFL is hungry for blocking tight ends. Mercedes Lewis is stuck around he's like, what, 38 now, and he's still on a roster for some reason? Yeah. So, they need blocking tight ends. He'll make a roster. I just don't know if he'll be drafted because of that skill.
A player I kept thinking about when I was watching him, I don't know if you agree with this or if you remember this player, John Bates, the Boise tight end.
Oh, I think John Bates is much smaller than that. No?
6'6", 260. That's what he was coming out.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought John Bates played much better in space than Brevin Spanford.
Okay. Yeah, I thought John Bates was like a blocking tight end, but like once in a while surprised me out like with his pass catching, but for the most part was a blocking tight end.
He's on Washington, I believe, and he's the one that's making sure Cole Turner doesn't get any snaps, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, I don't know if he's still with the team because he doesn't get a lot of snaps, but yes, he was. I know for a fact last year he was with Washington. So
Washington's too busy starting a former quarterback at tight end right now, and Jordan.
Yeah, that's what I was keeping my eye on
Logan
him,
Thomas.
for Dynasty. I was like, dude, this guy can't keep. Logan Thomas can't keep surviving like each year.
Right. Well, he's made it thus far, and we thank all you viewers who've made it this far with us today. That's all the players we have on the fantasy side. We hope we provided some sort of insight into what you can expect maybe in some rookie drafts coming up. But yeah, super excited to be in Mobile. Any closing thoughts, Mike?
No. Last year was the year of tight ends, so I feel like tight ends a little bit more interesting this just lately. So, I know we gave like some pretty poor grades down the stretch here, but I do think like I don't know, like the age of tight ends might be on the NFL. And if I watch a lot of Gronkowski. That's my boy as far as the Patriots go. And he had some very interesting thoughts about tight ends in the NFL, kind of saying how like they're not built like as in like his generation where you had to ask to do both. He's like, now you just do one and that's all you have to do. You have to block or you pass catch, which I thought was very interesting of him. But anyway, no, I'm very excited about Mobile, very excited about it. It's not always the best place for evaluating talent because it's very more individualistic. Like receivers looking at their footwork. That's what you're looking for. They have a few drills for that. For the running backs, like power backs can't really show off their power. There's no hitting. So you're looking at footwork as far as like really warm-up drills go. And then it's really just pass catching stuff. And then like for quarterbacks, again, there's no chemistry. So they're a little bit tougher to evaluate. And even offensive linemen, there's no chemistry between them either. So defenses have the advantage of finding holes. So it's a fun place, but it also definitely has some downsides too.
Yeah, it's very much for building hype. And so I'm hype about the hype that will be built. And we will be building on all of your priors and seeing how they match up. And so, yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. We obviously love talking about football, but I'm glad you all love talking about football as well. And so, if any of you are in Mobile, come say hi to us. We don't bite, probably. And so, come say hi, and we will let you know how things are going down there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So stay tuned. Tweet at us. You can find Mike at
FF_Dirty Mike.
Yeah, and you can find me at PKJB Lee. Tweet us questions. We'll be tweeting out some practice clips probably out there if technology decides to cooperate, and maybe some interview clips at Campus to Canton on the YouTube and the Twitter. And and so stay tuned, and we'll hope to provide you the best analysis we can. So thanks for hanging out with us, and until next time, see ya.